If you guys are struggling, I want you to sit in this episode because this guest has been through it and I think can teach us a few things. Now, some people think about Rich Roll and they think hair so good, he probably is a Pantene commercial. They think crazy abs. They think top podcaster. They think ultra marathoner, but also crippling alcoholism. Also huge pain, suffering, change of career, and he's 57 plus on a long marathon of life. And so I hope you guys, if you are feeling a little lost, if things are just hard right now, if you're wondering what to do next, if you don't know how to have a difficult conversation with somebody who is struggling with addiction that you love, but you need your boundaries too. If you are struggling with addiction, if you're just struggling with not being the exact person you want to be, I think this episode might be for you. I really liked it. I think it might be one of my favorite ones I've done yet. So without further ado, Rich Roll.
I want to share a quick business tip that I've been thinking a lot about lately. It's eliminate, automate, delegate. So if you do tasks in that order in your business, it runs more smoothly. I'm always looking for tools to help eliminate tasks, then automate them, and then finally delegate those that are absolutely necessary. One of those tools is Riverside. Not only can it record 4K video and audio remotely to make sure your podcast quality is top notch, but it's also drastically improved my team's editing speed with the text-based editor. Transcribes your footage, removes silences in one click, and creates these short clips just by selecting the text. Even better, if you make a mistake, which we try not to do, you can delete the sentence and the transcript will delete it from your video instantly. So Riverside has an in-platform editor where you can upload your own content too. So it's not just footage recorded on Riverside that gets the special treatment. So how do people find new podcasts? Often from seeing clips, right? You see a bunch of mine. Riverside gets this, and that's why I like their AI magic clips. Analyzes moments in your podcast that have the most potential to get traction online. That saves hours of listening to your podcast for the 5th time to find the perfect clip. Riverside's got you covered. We're always trying to remove, automate, not add, and complicate. But don't waste your time doing what Riverside can do for you. I got you guys a deal. If you want to try it for yourself, get the Riverside link in the description and use the code Cody for an exclusive discount just for y'all.
Bring the band in. Let's go.
So this week's interesting, Rich, having you here because I was in what I call the pain cave this week, which was just it was a brutal week. Multiple things going wrong in 2 of my businesses. I was sick last week. Had a friend go in a hospital and it felt really heavy. And typically, maybe me, like a lot of people, I don't share all that stuff. I'm like, it's part of the game. We just keep going. No big deal. But for whatever reason, I shared it this week and I had a bunch of people sort of, commiserate and say like, it does feel tough right now. And then you and I were at this conference this last week where we both spoke. When I brought that up to the audience, they all felt it. And then when you spoke, I heard from a bunch of them afterwards that they really resonated with you sharing sort of the pain, not just all the gains that you've had. Because if people look at the outside and they don't know your story, they see Rich Roll, sort of famous podcaster, multi-time best-selling author, cover of Men's Fitness, like 62 pack, great hair also. And, post 50, you got kids, you got a wife, like you got the whole thing. And yet what I found most fascinating about you in some ways is that most people who come online, they do it by sharing all their gains. And you didn't. You came online basically sharing a bunch of your pain. And so when I was reading your book and a lot of your background, it wasn't so much just the fact that you have gone through pain, addiction, changed your life, completely redefined your life, then launched a podcast platform company now called Boise Changes, what we're going to talk about, but that you say things like, I loved the pain and the pain loved me back. I wanted to start off by asking you, what do you mean by that? And when did you start turning pain into your actual teacher as opposed to your tormentor?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. It's delightful to meet you, and I'm very happy to be here. I think pain became my teacher very early in my life. I was a pretty awkward adolescent kid who struggled to make friends, was unsure about how to connect, and always felt constitutionally different from my peers, which made me introverted and shy and reluctant to place myself in social situations. And I also was somebody like a young kid who showed zero promise in terms of athletic prowess. Like I can't hit a ball. I can't, kick a soccer ball, like anything with eye-hand coordination, I've always been a disaster. So I was the last kid picked for kickball. I was bullied at the bus stop, like all the kind of, stuff that is visited upon an awkward young child. But the one thing that I did have a little bit of innate talent and prowess in was in the swimming pool. As a young kid, like I loved being on the summer swim team. And I was actually quite good at that. And there was a decision that I made around 13, 14 years old that I wanted to really invest in that. And I found myself as part of a club team in Washington, D.C., where suddenly I was surrounded by very talented young athletes who had national age group records or had qualified for the Olympic trials. And I realized immediately that the talent that I thought I had wasn't really what I thought it was. But I also discovered pretty quickly that I had a capacity to suffer and to work hard. And in a pretty short period of time, that started to pay dividends. And I was able to basically narrow the talent deficit gap through sheer volume and effort. And that was a powerful math equation for a young mind. And so suffering became a pathway for me to success and achievement that worked very well throughout junior high school and high school, such that by the time I was a senior in high school, still awkward, still insecure, still felt like I didn't know how to make friends or connect with other people. But I was able to rise to prominence as a swimmer and get recruited at all the colleges and was nationally ranked. And that skill set of focus and determination paid off in the classroom as well, because I'd always struggled as a student, but suddenly I was able to figure that out as well. And so I graduated near the top of my class and had all of these opportunities when I was 18 years old. I had the pick of the litter in terms of colleges. I was being lauded as this athlete, and the world was really my oyster. So suffering, to your point, to your question, suffering as a teacher, suffering was the ultimate teacher for me. Not only was it a teacher, it was like the solution to finding my way in the world. But it was very much premised on self-will. Like, I'm in charge. I have control over this thing. It's up to me. And if I'm willing to outwork everybody else, then I will be able to achieve any goal that I set for myself.
Do you think that bullying and getting picked last for kickball, and whether that's as a kid even, or the same sort of parallels as an adult, do you think that was actually good for you in some ways?
At the conference the other night, they asked me if I could give advice to a younger version of myself, what would it be? Mm-hmm. And, the joke that I always tell, because I get asked that question a lot, is like, just stop drinking, first of all. Like, this is not working for you. But the truth of the matter is that I don't know that I would change anything, because all of those experiences were formative and have produced the individual that I am today. And I live this amazing life, and I'm incredibly grateful and privileged, but it's a result of having to weather obstacles and, go to war with myself and learn how to develop a level of equanimity in the face of crisis or, financial dismantling and all these other kind of things that I've experienced, from the low lows of being a gutter alcoholic to being the head of a household with 4 kids and a mortgage and being unable to pay my bills. Like, I've gone through a lot and I've made various transformations along the way. But I don't know what life would look like had I been spared those.
Yeah. One of my favorite mentors said to me that I wish for you nothing except to live the full spectrum of the human experience. And I always loved that line in theory until I started understanding it in quasi practice, right? That, if your life is rosy and sunshine all the way, you're really getting just one end of the color spectrum, let's say, of humanity. But you have not had that. You have had a very big spectrum. It's been really wide. When we were talking earlier, you were telling me a little bit about the time where maybe for most of your life, you felt like you had no control over money. You felt financially inept. And you lived in it for much longer than you wished you had, I think is how you put it. Can you talk about that period? Because we'll get to the end about winning and strength and endurance and the hero's journey at the end. But I don't think a lot of people know that. I mean, I've met, I don't know, of the, let's say 20 billionaires I've met, I think probably about half of them have gone through bankruptcy and almost been broke many, many times. And so it'd be interesting to share that side.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a household where all my needs were met. My parents are still married. They took care of me. I, had the privilege of going to nice schools and a fancy college and law school and the like. But what happened with me was around 18, 19 years old, I discovered alcohol. And it wasn't long before alcohol became my primary driver. Like all of my ambitions and my goals and my aspirations and my dreams suddenly became secondary to the search for where my next good time was going to be. That was the most important thing. And look, I was a functional alcoholic for a long time, but alcohol works until it stops working. And in the case of people who suffer from alcoholism, like myself, it ultimately took me to some really dark and desperate places. There's nothing romantic or rock and roll about it. And my drunk-a-log really isn't all that spectacular. It's pretty mundane, actually, and boring. But along the way, I just became retrobate in like all of my ethics and my morals and my values. And that included any kind of financial responsibility. So I lived in New York City. I had a job as a paralegal in a law firm. I wasn't making very much money, but it was a time in which you could get credit cards easily, and it didn't take me long before I was racking up credit card debt. And even throughout law school and after law school, when I got a job at a decent law firm and then another law firm and was being paid a pretty good salary, my drinking was out of control and I was completely irresponsible. I could never make ends meet. I was always in the red and overdrawn by the time, for a couple of days before I was going to get my next paycheck. And I think over time, over many, many years of just that level of irresponsibility, I became convinced that I was constitutionally incapable of understanding money or managing it in any kind of responsible way. I very much had a poverty mindset and just believed to my core that I would never be able to be viable financially. Like I just didn't think I had the capacity to make money, save money, and be responsible with it. And to reflect back on that now, because now I am financially stable and I have, built businesses that are viable and successful. It's actually a miracle that I've been able to overcome that. And we were sharing before the podcast that I still have residue of that though. Like I can still detect where I feel a sense of unworthiness around money and my relationship to it. Like, am I responsible? I have a business partner now and he has, been fundamental in helping me overcome this and creating stability and infrastructure around what I do, because I'm very much an unlikely entrepreneur and I needed him to be a mentor and to teach me and to hold my hand and to, create something and show me along the way, like how to do this. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. It's been, an amazing relationship with this individual. But yeah, I mean, I suffered from that terribly. And even in sobriety, I got sober at 31. In the aftermath of that, I still couldn't square the equation. Like it just took me a really long time. And then when I decided to leave the law and venture into the unknown and incur risk, because I grew up in a very risk averse household. We went through many years of financial uncertainty and dismantlement. And I've had cars repossessed and, we weren't able to pay our mortgage. Like all of this, seeps into my consciousness and is evidence of like my lack of maturity or my irresponsibility or my incapacity to not master, but just fundamentally like steward with any level of responsibility, the dollar.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is I remember I was speaking at an event and the woman in front of me did this really interesting thing. It was a women's conference. And she said, everybody close your eyes. All the women in the audience, all pretty like business women, I don't know about their financial situation, but business women, so like relatively successful in some way, shape, or form, close your eyes. And I want you to make a physical representation of what money means to you. So like, if you're happy, you're going to make your body move in a way that makes you feel happy. Like, what do you feel when you say the word money? What does that feel for you? And like, make your body move. And I was sitting sort of backstage. So I was kind of watching the audience while everybody else had their eyes closed. And what was interesting is she goes, okay, nobody move, but open your eyes. And basically what you saw across like 80 or 90% of the audience is when I think about money now, if somebody was to tell me, give me a physical representation of money, I'd be like, money, I'd be like, yes, give it to me. Great. And in the audience, it was like, they were like this, they were like this, they were like, money or like money. It was like very small type movements. And it made me realize how pervasive this idea is. That like actually for some reason, most of us have this relationship with money, which makes sense because, most Americans die, overweight and alone and broke. It kind of maybe makes sense that we feel that way. But what I think is also really interesting about your story in particular is this thing about credit cards. One is real. Also fascinating how the US system has like 3x the interest rates of credit cards of the European system. So like some things are set up against you already and you have to overcome them just in the way probably you do with food. But the other thing that's interesting about that situation, I think is, when you were going through this, you not only had money issues, but some health issues, obviously some sobriety issues. You've talked about something that I really liked, which was the contagious nature of discipline and how discipline's contagious and it can kind of trickle through multiple aspects of your life. If at this time you kind of had lots of things going wrong, or if somebody's listening and they have lots of things going wrong, how do you figure out what to fix first?
Yeah, that's a great question. Discipline is contagious. And I think you have to start first with understanding what you have control over and what you don't. When I began this journey that I've been on, it began with, what am I putting in my mouth? I have control over that. I don't have control over how people respond to me, how people react to me, whether I'm going to get this gig or that gig, or this thing is going to work out. All of those things that produce so much anxiety for us are very much out of our control. And so there is a surrender that you have to undergo, like a releasing of your attachment to outcomes, and a reconfiguration of your focus on the very small things that you have control over. We don't have control over a lot. We have control over how we respond or react to situations and how we treat ourselves and other people. And that's kind of it, right? So when you drill it down to these tiny things, and begin the process of honoring yourself by making a better choice in the most micro way possible, those things compound. Self-esteem is the product of performing esteemable acts on behalf of yourself and others. But when you do something that's honoring yourself, like, I'm going to not eat that French fry and I'm going to have the salad. Pick your example. They seem like tiny little things, but when you begin to aggregate those things and understand that how you do anything is how you do everything, these things build. And I'm somebody who is the furthest thing from an overnight success. I am an ultra endurance athlete in sport, but also in life. Like, I'm 57 now and I feel like I'm only starting to connect the dots and feel comfortable with who I am and what I share with the world. And things didn't even really begin for me until my mid 40s. And I think I shared this at the event the other night. I'm pretty sure I am the oldest. I'm 57. I'm the oldest person to have like a big, like, multi-million-dollar shoe contract. So it's somebody who their whole life aspired to be a professional athlete, and like a big shoe deal is sort of like an emblem of like being a successful professional athlete. I'm here to tell you that I accomplished that at 57. So these things, my point being, like, everything takes a lot of time, and I'm not in a hurry, and I'm patient, and I understand that it is those tiny little things that you're doing every day in that kind of James Clear Atomic Habits way that move the mountain. And they're the easiest things to brush aside or ignore or dismiss. And yet for me, I'm fully aware and cognizant that those are the important things that you have to do. And I think to your earlier point, when I reflect, you were making me kind of reflect back on this journey. There's something at the cost of being a little woo-woo and spiritual.
We're in Austin. You're good.
There is something curiously mystical about the fact that I spent decades trying to fulfill the expectations of society by pursuing the traditional path of wealth and success. I went to a nice private boys' school in Washington, D.C. I got into all the Ivy League colleges and went to Stanford. I went to Cornell Law School, and I got the job at the law firm. So I was very much on this traditional track towards what we deem success to be. And no matter how much I began to scale that ladder upwards, it was not solving that crisis of happiness that I was having. And I wasn't able to make the money work either. So it didn't matter what my salary was. I couldn't save money because I was so deeply unhappy that the only way I could solve that discomfort was to spend the money I had on things that I thought would fill that hole. And it wasn't until I got to such a place of existential angst over this that I was willing to walk away from it and let it go and really do the inside work of trying to understand what it was that I wanted to do and what I wanted to express and what I wanted to stand for and what I wanted to pursue, that the birth of what I do today began. And anybody and everybody would have said and did say to me at that time that I was insane, that this didn't make any sense, that this was, a path to poverty, that I began to put something together that was not only personally meaningful, but became more financially successful than anything I could have done had I stayed on that traditional track. And so I think there is an energy piece to this as well. Like, why are you pursuing the path that you're on? What is your motivation? Is it internally driven? Is it based on your sense of meaning and purpose and value? Or is it the echo of your parents and your community or however you've been raised to believe that this is what you need to do? So are you doing it for external reasons or internal reasons? And I had to go on a very long, fraught road to figure that out for myself.
So good. Yeah. It reminds me of something else that was in your book about, the prize never goes to the fastest guy. It goes to the guy who slows down the least. True in endurance sports and possibly even truer in life, which I loved that line. It's very true. I mean, if you look at the average age of millionaires in the US, it's actually late 40s. And if you look at the average age of billionaires in the US, it's late 60s. And so we have these people on Instagram that are driving Ferraris at 20, doing drop shipping courses and selling this dream that is just statistically and numerically not true. And I think we need more examples of people who look differently, sharing the real instead of the fake. And, what's interesting about the credentializing that you went through, or the credentialing from Stanford and, your sort of upper end high school, is I was talking to this small business owner the other day here who owns a dry cleaners, like family owned business, in the business for decades, Latino dude. And I was asking him, what is he going to do with the business when he moves on next? And it's kind of interesting because they bought the real estate for the small business. They own it. You can tell they've like sort of cobbled together different parts of the building, over the years. He has a picture of his dad who started the business behind him. And I said, he's like, well, I'm going to run it till I die. And then I'm like, how old are you? And he's like, well, I'm 72. I'm like, man, not that far away, right? Like we need a better plan than that. And I'm like, your kid's going to take it over? And he said, no. I worked hard, so my kids didn't have to. And I thought, interesting. Okay, what do your kids do? And he goes, well, I sent them to school, right? And, one is an accountant and one is a consultant. Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a chuckle for a moment inside because that's such a thing that I'm Latino, my Latino parents would have done. And yet, when did we decide that we would find more joy pursuing credentials and employment in other people's professions that have some sort of, PhD, JD, whatever at the end of it, instead of maybe having some of our own bizarre skin in the game path, which is what you have. And so one thing we could skip to a little bit that I thought was super interesting is you went like a wild path kind of, which was, you were an entertainment lawyer, right? Entertainment?
Yeah, I started as a litigator and then became a transactional entertainment lawyer later.
Yeah.
In the later phases of my legal career.
Slightly maybe more entertaining, although not a ton. And you have this other thing that I loved, which was a quote from Joseph Campbell, I believe, about one can spend one's whole life climbing the ladder only to realize it's been placed against the wrong wall. And I think you kind of realized that you were on the wrong wall.
Yeah.
But when did you realize that? And how hard was that to change?
Really hard. I think my realization of it was always there on a low level, and it just was brewing until it got to a point
like
where
you
it was
felt it in your gut.
boiling over. Yeah, I mean, because I have this facility for suffering and working hard, I can force my way through anything. And so whether it's law school, like I actually enjoyed law school. I enjoyed the academic pursuit of that. That's very different from the practice of law. And I knew pretty quickly once I arrived at the first law firm that hired me that this was not for me, but I can put my nose to the grindstone and like do the work. I'm smart enough to do the work and like, I can like make it work. But I began to notice around me, like some of these people like this. Like I actually really don't like this. Like I have to summon so much will in order to like focus and like get this stuff done. And I know that I'm not made for it. Like it doesn't come easy, but I'll figure it out. And I think in the back of my mind, I thought, well, everybody's having this experience with this. And I didn't realize that it came easier for other people. And there were other people who actually liked it. Like I'm very conflict averse. I don't really enjoy being in the middle of conflict. And here I am, a litigation associate at a law firm. That's all it is. And I'd be like in a deposition or, at a hearing. I'm like, can't you guys just get over this? Like, what's the big deal? Like life is short, and then, and realizing the other lawyers like thrive on conflict. They just love it. They can't wait. They come armed with their arguments. And I was really good at writing briefs, but not so great in the oral argument department. And I was like, what am I doing? Like I literally I've invested all this time and energy and I'm in a career that is completely at odds with my natural disposition, which is like, I want to be with people who are building something in a collaborative way. And I'm in an environment that is the opposite of that. And if you resolve a conflict through trial or a settlement agreement, you're rewarded with another conflict to work on, And this started to like grate on my soul. So by the time I got sober at 31, and the experience of spending 100 days in treatment provided enough clarity for me to realize like I'm in the wrong career. Like I know that. But like I said, like so much time and energy and money had gone into, becoming this person. It then becomes very hard to let go of it. And if you Google my name and you get some kind of abbreviated version of my story, it looks like all of these decisions and transformations took place in a very compressed period of time, but it couldn't be further from the case. Like I remained a lawyer for many, many years in different incarnations after that, before I finally was ready to completely release. And I slid out of it very slowly. But I would say, by the time I was 39, that's where the existential crisis was like a full-blown thing that needed to be addressed. And that just happened to coincide with a health scare. I'd been stuffing my emotions with fast food and trying to medicate myself with unhealthy lifestyle habits. And those two things in tandem created a situation in which I was walking up a flight of, I've told the story many times, it's in my book, but I was walking up a flight of stairs to my bedroom late one night and had to pause. I was this former world-ranked Stanford swimmer and still would look in the mirror and think that I was still that guy. And here I couldn't walk up a simple flight of stairs without being winded, tightness in my chest. And it just opened a portal. Like it was just one of those moments, like a line in the sand moment where like, I can't live this way anymore. I need to make changes. And that's where controlling the controllables came in. Like, what can I do? Well, I don't know that I can walk away from my job or just like reinvent myself wholesale overnight. I'm going to start with food, and food led to fitness, and fitness led to becoming this ultra endurance athlete. Like all of these things kind of unfolded organically out of making one choice in a very heightened moment to change my relationship with myself. And so the podcast, the books, like this, all the stuff that I do now can all be traced back to that one moment and the compound interest of making a different decision and then building upon that.
Yeah. I'm still trying to picture you litigated in flip flops. Like the whole image is just, you're right. It's just not a fit. There's no yarn bracelets allowed, no flip flops. But I actually think it's beautiful because when people are struggling, and I would say like something like 65% of Americans don't like their jobs. So like, if you don't like what you're doing right now, you're in good company, because that's most people. And so of course you didn't think that it was normal for you to, or of course you thought it was normal for you to kind of not like what you did. That's what people say. It's work. Who likes work? Right?
Right.
And then they say, so that's one hand. But then on the other hand, they go, well, if you don't like it, just jump, take the jump, take the leap. Well, is the only way to move from point A to point B leaping or jumping off a cliff? Absolutely not. But there's not enough people that went through the corporate grind, I think, that are public now that talk about, hey, I was like you. I mean, most people work in a company for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I didn't just take a big leap and sleep on a basement and do this crazy startup and, have it skyrocket. It took me 10 years to get out. I was the same in finance, And
I think that reality, like that truth, makes it all the more problematic or pernicious when you scroll on Instagram or TikTok and you see all these people talking about like, quit your job and reinvent, like if you're not happy, then you owe it to yourself to leave. Like, I don't think any of that is helpful or responsible. And I think for people who are in a job that is, kind of soul sucking on some level, but really don't know how to make a change or how to reinvent, like leap to what, right? Like, so all those messages, all they do is make people feel bad about their lives and the lack of agency that they have. I don't think they're in service to or empowering in any way. I think it's very insensitive to, this massive population of people who are in kind of jobs that they can, like you can keep doing it. Like it's a low grade kind of dissatisfaction, this sense that maybe there's something better out there, but no clarity on what that might be. And to say you should just quit your job or like go, create a business, I think lands on most people like, you don't understand my life, or you don't understand the difficulties or the predicaments of my life because I have bills and I have kids, and I can't just do that.
Which is totally real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's the difference between sort of like you said, it's like low grade, consistent irritation, or you could say pain, versus acute asymmetric pain, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times our lives are filled with the low grade pain that you either have to realize you're slowly simmering or make some change. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is you have another tweet that I loved, which was, it's a little long, but the magic you are looking for is in the work you are attempting to avoid. Perfectionism and paralysis by analysis has killed more goals than failure ever could. So to parenthesize a little bit, do the damn thing, imperfect as you are. Do it, because someday will eventually become never. And what I thought was interesting about this is then you go on to have different ways on that you speak about taking the small bite, about doing the next thing that's in your control. But do you remember, was there a day or a moment where this eventually clicked for you? Was there one moment, or is this a series?
What clicks?
That I have to do something, that I can't I have to make some sort of change in my life.
I mean, there was that moment on the staircase for sure. There was the moment.
Did you literally the next day go do?
Yeah, I did.
Interesting.
I did. Yeah, I did. And the reason that I was able to do that is because I had been visited with another line in the sand moment the day that I decided like I need to get sober and go to a treatment center.
Yeah.
And that decision, which was made one hungover morning that wasn't really all that different from many other hungover mornings that I'd experienced, changed my life permanently and saved my life. And so I knew the power of a single decision in a particular heightened moment. I knew the potential energy that something like that holds. And so when I was on that staircase and having those emotions, it felt like that other day. And I was able to recall and remember, like, I made that decision and look how much my life changed. This feels kind of like that. What change or decision can I make right now that could be a version of that could change my life in a new and interesting way? And so what I did the next day was begin this like 7-day juice cleanse, not because I felt like I needed to detoxify my body, but what I needed to do was do something hard that was out of my comfort zone. When I went to the treatment center, I had to detox off drugs and alcohol. In the wake of that staircase episode, I needed like a detox for life. And so I needed to, create my own version of that to go through a transformative experience where I felt like I could reboot my operating system and shift my perspective. And I think if you want to draw any actionable insight from that, it's that I think that we are all visited by moments throughout our life that are sort of sliding doors into a different life. And unless we're fully present and have done enough self-reflection or we're in enough pain, a lot of those moments kind of pass us by. There are very short time windows that in which you can take an action that could shift you and put you on a different perspective, but it requires a level of cognizance when they're visited upon us. And so my call to action always to people is like, we all have these moments. Can you be present enough to honor it when it arrives and make that different decision in that heightened moment?
It's really beautiful. I love the analogy of the sliding door. There's something like very obvious. I almost picture like an airport, how when they have all the sliding doors on those trains that come by. It's true. You're going to have so many of them through life, but so often we don't take them. One thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is you talk a lot about addiction. And, our country's wild right now with, 46 million Americans dealing with drug and alcohol addiction. I can't even imagine if you layer workaholicism, what's that word? Workaholism. Yeah. There we go. With porn and, social media addiction. So, you have to imagine, like, we all know somebody who's been addicted. And, I kind of want to start first from the perspective of, I had a family member who struggled with a drug addiction that I'm very, very close with. And if I'm honest, I had no fucking idea how to be there, how to help. I had some resentments about it. I was like, just get it together. Like, what do we do? I really didn't know how to be supportive and probably was not that supportive during it. And you had some really incredible things that you mentioned about what it's like to stand with people who are struggling with a severe addiction. Maybe one thing I want to start with is you said addiction solved a problem for people. So remember that. What do you mean by that?
When we think about addiction, we think about the substance or the behavior, whether it's gambling, fentanyl, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, choose your poison. We contemplate addiction in the context of the substance being the enemy. And I think it's important to understand that the substance or the behavior is actually the solution to the problem. The problem resides within the individual. It is a sense of dis-ease with oneself, a sense that your emotions and your sort of disposition is so uncomfortable that you are literally willing to go to the ends of the earth to feel differently. And the path to feeling differently can be found in one of these substances. It can be found in shopping, in relationships, in gambling, in porn, in sex, you name it, like anything to take you out of your state and allow you to numb that emotional dis-ease with something external is the very nature of addiction. And I think when you are struggling to feel compassionate towards someone who suffers, it's important to disassociate the behavior from the individual, because this compulsion and this obsession is so powerful, it overrides every instinct within that person around self-preservation or ethical behavior, right? And they're acting in opposite to who they are, because that craving, that demand, that discomfort is so powerful that it's driving that unhealthy behavior pattern. And it's very difficult to help somebody who is in that state. You can drag them off to rehab, you can do interventions, you can talk to them, you can do all that stuff. And it's heartbreaking, because unless it's self-generated, unless there is an innate willingness within that person to address the problem and get sober or overcome the addiction or get into some form of recovery, when you compel it and impose it on them, it generally doesn't stick. So it becomes incredibly heartbreaking for so many people when you have a loved one who is suffering, because there's a powerlessness to it. Like, you can only help so much. And your role is to help them to understand that you love them and that you are available if and when they're ready to be helped, but that you cannot stand by and co-sign the behavior. And so you have to let go. And that's very scary, because you have to reflect on what happens if, something really bad happens to that person and I didn't step in and try to prevent that. There's no easy answer to that, and it's different. It's very much a case by case basis with that individual. But, standing by when someone you care about is in the throes of it is a very challenging situation. And that's the situation my parents found themselves in, dealing with me back during that time.
I think that's really helpful for somebody listening who's going through it. I think I needed somebody to tell me that, to tell me, hey, you're not actually not helping him by not engaging and allowing that behavior, but saying, I'm here for you. I love you. When you are ready, I didn't have that vernacular. When you're ready, I will pay for the rehab. I will do, I will stand by you. I will do whatever it is that you need at that point when you're ready.
Right. But I'm not available for your bullshit and
right.
lying and your manipulation.
Right. And it was too hard for me to say that, really, or I didn't have the words. So I think that's really useful. And you had one where, if I'm not wrong, you basically had a guide who kind of said, hey, I really think you should go to rehab. And he said, and you said something along the lines of, I think I can handle it without rehab. One more chance. If I relapse again, I'll go, my word. And the guy said, last time I heard that excuse, the guy died choking on his own vomit. Are you sure you want to risk it? And you said, yes. But you credit that guy with being with you and holding you lightly on the road to recovery. What was that scenario? And what happened?
Yeah, I was seeing a therapist. My parents had had enough of me and they were done, but they said, listen, we found this therapist and it's up to you, but we think that it would be good if you would go and see this guy. And I agreed to do that, even though my parents were receding into the background and really didn't want anything to do with me at this period of time. And, and this guy was in recovery himself. So he could speak my language and he was very good at being compassionate while also deploying X-ray vision and being able to see through any kind of nonsense or bullshit that I would throw at him. And he put that challenge to me. What's I think instructive about the story that you just told is that I was convinced that I could solve this problem on my own. And the reason that I was convinced was because in every other area of my life in which I was able to become successful, it was a result of my ability to work hard, to suffer, to force the result that I wanted. In other words, this capacity to suffer equates to a tremendous capacity for self-will. It's up to me. I have control over this. I could go from not being a good swimmer to being world ranked. I could go from not being a good student to getting into Stanford. Like, there's no reason why, if I apply this capacity for self-will to this problem, that I can't solve it. Yeah. What I had to learn was that the more I applied my self-will to the problem, the deeper the hole got. And that was very confusing. Like, why can't I figure this out? Like, I am so determined to not drink and to, be sober. And then Friday night rolls around and this sense of powerlessness and, one drink, and then that leads to, a blackout and, a car accident, or, all the chaos, like tons of chaos. I could not figure out why I couldn't fix this. And so when he said, look, you need to go to treatment, what he was basically saying is you need to give it up and let go and surrender, and not only ask for help, but be in a position of humility to receive help. And I was like, no, I got this. And I think anybody who's a striver or achievement oriented, or anybody who nobody's self-made, but, somebody who has like kind of crawled their way out of one situation to a better situation, understands how powerful that call to self-will can be. And this was the first instance in my life where that capacity was failing me. And I had to get to a point where I was in so much pain that pain exceeded my fear of letting go and doing something different. And by doing something different, it meant relinquishing my need to try to control this, to say, I can't control this. I'm powerless. I need help. Please help me. And that's a very humbling thing that requires letting go, like the letting go of control over your own life, which was scary. And I think we associate words like surrender and letting go with weakness. But in truth, I think they're a pathway to incredible strength. Humility, vulnerability, openness, and honesty. These are not weaknesses. These are very powerful emotions that, when channeled in the appropriate context, lead to tremendous fortitude and not just strength, but ultimately a sense of self and a comfort with oneself that overcomes that sense of detachment and confusion that is the defining characteristic of what it feels like to be an addict or an alcoholic.
So you went into AA, and you talked about that quite a bit. The part that I thought what might be interesting is I had never heard about inventory in particular. And I have quite a few friends who I told, who've been through AA or are in AA, I don't know the right way to say it, and are sober now, but big fans of yours. And so I asked them, what do you want to know? What would you ask Rich? And one of them said, ask him about inventory, what it is, but maybe even more than that, today. Do you think people who are not traditionally addicted could use or should use inventory in their day-to-day lives in some way? Because you still do it to this day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part and parcel of like any 12-step program are the 12 steps. And these programs are shrouded in mystery. They're anonymous for a reason. Yeah. But the blueprint and the tools and the steps, I think, are incredibly powerful for up-leveling your life and for self-understanding that anybody can benefit from doing. And one of the fundamental tools, which is step 4, is doing a fearless moral inventory. And the process of doing that is basically going through your life and writing down every single person, institution, that you have a resentment towards. Like, who are all, go through your entire life. Who are the people you resent? And then go do a fear inventory. What are all the things you're afraid of? And then do a sexual inventory. Go through all of your relationships and sexual encounters and try to identify where you were selfish, self-seeking, and not compassionate, right? And if you're morally rigorous and completely honest in doing this, what you will discover is that patterns emerge. And those patterns reveal, in an objective sense, where your character defects lie. And so you will see, like, oh my goodness, when I all these people that I resent, like, my side of the street is that I did this. Like, how did you contribute to that resentment? And what can you, when I look at the relationships that I've had and you realize like, oh yeah, I don't know that I navigated those relationships with the utmost of, ethics, right? I was selfish here, whatever. Like, you'll see patterns emerge, and then those give you some clarity on the things that you need to work on. And so I think it's a really powerful and revealing kind of bird's eye view of the things that we're blind to, because we don't have perspective on our own lives, and we need outside influence in order to kind of hold us to account. And this tool is a way of doing that for yourself. And then, of course, you do it like within the context of 12 steps, you're doing this with another human being. So there's an accountability piece. But when you work through them and then you identify all these people that you have to go and make amends to, which is not an apology. Like, you have to make it right. You have to find a way to make it right with these people. Sometimes that means you just have to move forward in your life and not do that again, because you don't want to perpetrate further harm by going to these people who don't want anything to do with you. And in other cases, like, they're simple ones, like you need to repay a debt or whatnot, but you're cleaning house, right? We're robbing ourselves of the peace and happiness that's available in the present moment by looping and ruminating on past encounters and how they're going to impact us in a future that hasn't yet occurred.
It's so true. Well, I think a lot of times when business people listen to stuff like this and they're in their sort of pain situation, the immediate thought is, well, I want to go and take the next action that I think I need to fix it, which is what you did. Like, well, I'm just not going to drink this Friday, or I'm just going to make one more phone call. But it's a beautiful idea that what if the thing that actually compounds is what I control, the things I could put in my body, the ways that I move my body, the ability I have to make amends and make things lighter for me. Maybe that's an easier place for people to stop so that their movement can be more big hands open, what's next, as opposed to sort of shrinking, protecting, etc. So I had never thought about it that way. I want to talk just slightly now about, let's call it the next sprint of your life. Mm-hmm. So, I do think that part of life and success that's real is really that the successful people have just had the ability to do two things, which is endure for a long time and iterate until they're, maybe in your words, against the right wall. Mm-hmm. And you, I read this thing about, it's 7 days on 5 separate islands. You and Jason Lester had done 12 miles of swimming, 560 miles of cycling, 131 miles of running, 703 miles in total. At first, when I heard 560 miles of cycling, I read it as crying for some reason, which probably tells you how I feel about that. But I was wondering, what does the voice inside of your head sound like when you are in that sort of chosen pain cave? Is it very different? And how do you keep going for that long?
Different from what? Different from just walking around? Voice in my head.
Yeah.
There's an honesty to it. I mean, that particular challenge we did an Ironman, we did 5 Ironmans on 5 Hawaiian islands in like 6 days. So an Ironman a day, and, then flying to the next island to it. And that was a very hard challenge, but I've spent many hours training for races like that, a lot of solitary time. And I think the kind of pain cave or low grade suffering that comes with endurance sports, and particularly ultra endurance sports, is that there is no escape from the self. And I think that this is kind of how we open the conversation. Like, that is an incredible teacher. When you have to sit with your discomfort for many, many, many hours, there's nowhere to run and there's nowhere to hide. There's a quieting of the chatter of your mind. Like, you're not looping and ruminating on the things that you might be if you were just walking around and not in that level of discomfort. And there's an honesty and a truth to it where you're confronted with the truth of who you are, your flaws, your limitations. It's a very emotional, like a lot of emotions come up because you're kind of so fatigued and run down. And I think you meet yourself in a very honest place, and you have to grapple with that. And I think when I was going through all of that existential angst about who I was and what I wanted to do with my life, endurance sports, the training was my way of kind of going into the cave and trying to figure out who I was. Like I needed to leverage this capacity that I had for suffering to learn about myself and to figure out who I was. Because I'll be honest with you, Cody, like I never asked myself what I wanted to do. I was like on a program, this is what you do. I never questioned that. So there was no self-reflection on like, well, what do I enjoy? Like what makes me happy? What is it that you would like to leave as a legacy for your, like, I never thought about those things, and I needed time and I needed space and I needed a solitary experience to really wrestle with that. So as much as, my book Finding Ultra is about all of this endurance stuff, it's really kind of this spiritual odyssey that I went on in an attempt to figure out who I was. It's like it was a journey of self-discovery, and it was a burning in the fire. Like I had to kind of go through all of these experiences and hardships and all the financial stuff in order to, kind of burn away whoever I was and emerge on the other side of it stronger and more worthy of, the kind of work that I'm in service of today. Like those experiences were absolutely critical and crucial. Like I can't short circuit that. There's no shortcut to that. Like, it's part and parcel and necessary to be worthy of like the work that you aspire to do, I think.
Do you think that being by yourself is the best way to learn who you are instead of like taking more in, asking more questions, getting advice, going to mentors? Do you learn more? And do you think more people learn more by just looking inwards?
I can only answer for myself. I think that's probably a very individual thing. I did what I needed to do. And I probably could have used some good mentors. Like I went through many years of not really having mentors. And actually the mentors that I had throughout my 20s and 30s were bad mentors, weren't good mentors. And so I needed to go deep within myself, I think, in order to figure a few things out. So it's not for me to say that that's how everybody else should do it. And one of the things you learn in recovery is like, you don't give advice, you share your experience. And so I'm very reticent to ever be directly looking to camera and telling people what they should or they shouldn't do. Like, I'm not here to take your inventory or to tell you to do this and not this. Like, I'm here to share my experience.
That's really good. I could be a little bossy, so that's kind of good. It's a good reminder. I mean, I try to not be in real life. I'll always ask, like, do you want me to just listen, or do you want an opinion, or do you want ideas? But on the internet, I have found that like one of the words that people like the most is you. I thought that people could learn almost exclusively by case study or by experiential storytelling. But at least when it comes to business and money, I think a lot of people are like, I need steps through 1 through 12. Mm-hmm. And then you have to caveat them and go, listen, these are the steps 1 through 12 that I did or this person did or that has worked. And you can try them and they worked in this context and they might not work in that context. So you're going to have to change. But I think it's actually really refreshing, and people, probably why you're followed by millions of people. You don't do that a lot. You're not like, well, you should. In fact, I don't know if I've ever heard you say those words.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable doing that. I certainly have opinions about what I think people should do, but I'm always reticent to kind of voice in that way. And I just don't think I'm constitutionally wired for that. And I'm not here to say like people shouldn't do that. It's just like, this is kind of how I do it. And I've often thought actually like, I think I would, if I made videos where I just looked at camera and I was, here's what you need to do. Like, here's your protocol. I'd probably like grow, there would be like, that's what people want to hear. That's what they like hearing.
Yeah.
But in my experience, life is messy. It's complicated. Everything is context dependent. And when you're talking to a broad audience and you're saying, do this, don't do this, is that helpful? Yeah. And are people actually taking that and putting it into action? I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Yeah. I just know for myself, like that doesn't feel right or comfortable for me with like kind of my wiring and disposition.
Yeah. Well, I think it's
especially with respect to like substances and like diet and nutrition and fitness, like, these are all individual choices that people have to make. And it's like, here's what I did and here's what happened to me, make your inference. But I'm not here to say, don't do that, do this, do it my way.
Yeah, I couldn't really picture like Rich Roll, like vegan or die shirts. Like I can't really.
Yeah, no.
I don't think that's on brand for you. So one thing that I want to kind of like round out now. So you've shared a lot, I think, with humans that are struggling in a moment, with humans that are surrounded by people that are struggling, about how at least you course corrected, and maybe some ideas to get them thinking about their path and finding the right ladder again. You've interviewed some of the greats of our generation. Rick Rubin, who is like, I hope I almost never meet him because I like his books and his ideas too much now. And Rainn Wilson, same thing. You just signed to your network, which is incredible. And for people who don't know that, that's Dwight from The Office, which I'm sure he loves that comparison. But every time I've listened to that man on a podcast, I am like blown away by the philosophical nature and how he could take something esoteric, simplify it, and also make it entertaining. Matthew McConaughey, also maybe I hope I never meet him because I really like him.
Well, you live in Austin.
Oh, no, I know. Oh, gosh, I'm just a huge fan. But was there ever a moment in an interview with some of these greats, or maybe somebody unexpected, where something you learned on your podcast completely changed your life?
It's such a hard question to answer. And I've been asked this before, and I always struggle to answer it. For me, I've been doing this 11 years, like 800, however many episodes. And it's all like just this soup of osmosis. But when people pin me down and they're like, well, when that person said that, it's like, I don't know. My brain doesn't process it that way. I think more in terms of broader themes that recur. And I think if I could answer the question in that context, the broad takeaways that I've been able to extract from all of these amazing people that I've had the great privilege of meeting and speaking to is that doing anything well is hard. And as much as we want to look at these people and idolize them and think that they're just gifted with talent that is beyond our ability to conceptualize, that's almost never the case. That even in the most brilliant careers, like these people had hardship and worked harder than you would suspect, and they're more human than you might imagine. But beneath it, the message is always that we're all so much more capable than we allow ourselves to believe, and we're all tiptoeing and dancing on top of hidden reservoirs of potential that are just waiting to be tapped into. And I believe that every single person has the ability to tap into those reservoirs of potential and make them more manifest in their life. What that looks like for that person is very specific to that person, and there's no one way to do it. But I think in each and every case, it begins with looking inward. So as much as we want to outsource the solution and be told, here are the 5 steps, here's the protocol, in truth, life is just too messy for that. And if you want the real, honest answer, that answer already exists within you. You have to excavate it, which means you need to develop a deeper, more honest relationship with yourself. I did it through these 12 steps. There are many modalities for self-discovery, therapy, etc. But it can begin with that question, which is, what are you hiding from? Where is the change or the growth? Where does that reside? What is the growth or the change that you are most reluctant or resistant to engaging with? And I would suggest that everybody begin there. And usually that's something embarrassing or something shameful. But I think that excavation is where the juice is. That's where the gem is. And I think with respect to, you were talking about, it's hard out there right now. Like there's a lot of hardship. The obstacles that you're facing and the mountain that you're trying to climb, or the difficulty that you're facing, or the setback that you just endured, these things are all teachers. My wife calls them your divine moments. So rather than resent them or recoil from them, how can you engage them from a different perspective? Everything is neutral until you bring your perspective to it. So how can you shift your default attitude towards these hardships and instead approach them as opportunities, as vehicles for your growth and evolution? And I think if you can do that, then you're putting yourself in a position to reap the rewards of that self-discovery. And that's the foundation upon which you can build a more meaningful and fulfilling life. The problem is it's very esoteric. It's hard to put your hands, like, what did he just say? Like, how do I even do that? Like, I get all of that.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, if you're trying to build something meaningful that is going to fulfill you, that's going to give you a sense that your life is being driven by purpose and is on a path towards some level of satisfaction and happiness, and ultimately, financially viable, I think that is the way to do it. And that way's hard. It's not a 5-step plan. It's not like do this, do that. But in my experience, that is the engine that has created the thing that I get to, do and be today.
You have 4 kids?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been married for how long?
Been married 11 years. I've been with my wife since 2000. So we've been together like 23 years at this point. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Do your kids listen to the podcast?
No.
Do they listen?
They don't. They don't care.
Do they
don't care.
Do they know that millions of people follow you online?
Yeah, they know. Well, it's fun now. Like, so, my oldest daughter is 20 and she's in college in Chicago. And so she'll have friends that like see my Instagram. I don't know if they listen to the podcast, but they'll see real, like occasionally. Yeah. Like that's like a thing, which is kind of hilarious.
Hysterical.
Yeah, they do and they don't, but like, you always think like, I'm going to be the cool dad, and like, it's rigged. Like, doesn't matter what you do or how cool you are, you're still lame to your kids. And it should be that way. But then I'm like, do you realize like, I'm pretty cool. Look at your friends' dads. Like, come on, right? And they're not going to give it to you.
No, my husband always says that.
Nor should they.
Yeah, he's like, we're going to be the cool parents. I mean,
Yeah.
we are not. We are already barely cool. So you just proved it. It's just, you can't be cool enough to your kids. But but you at least feel like the lessons that you learn, you can impart on them in a different way from talking about it as much as you have and working on it as much as you have? Or you just try to do the, hey, no you shoulds to my kids either?
No, it's a little different when you're parenting. I mean, there's moments where you have to be like, this is not okay. And, we need you to be more like this. I'm a pretty soft dad. I'm not a big disciplinarian. Yeah.
Really?
I'm the feeling dad. For me, it's all about like communication. So it's less like, I'm not like, you need to do, like, I'm not like that. Like and my wife is an insane parent. Like she's so good, and all our kids are like artists in some form or another, and have all picked like really kind of interesting pursuits. None of them are real. Yoga and stuff like that, but like not like nobody's interested in like the athletic stuff. Like,
no ultramarathon.
I'm on my own.
Nobody's arguing with you.
No,
okay, I don't blame them, honestly.
No, painter, sculptor, and then filmmaker, and then 2 musicians.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, my husband and my joke is, he always says, I think he adapted it from a comedian, so I should say that. But his adaptation of the joke is for his parents, like, thank you for giving me enough trauma to become a Navy SEAL, but not enough trauma to become a stripper. Yeah. and so
no,
it's from his name. It's like
good.
Enough trauma.
Yeah, it's good. We've all had our pains and our traumas, and how can we be grateful for them instead of grinding our teeth and being resentful, and these experiences make us who we are. And so can you leverage your pain to set up a trajectory for growth and evolution, or are you just going to be a victim of it? And that's a narrative. Like, we're all a product of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're capable of, and what we're not capable of. But they're just stories. So what is the story that you're telling yourself, and what might be a better story? And I think if you look at your story and it's not serving you, or you keep running into dead ends, deconstruct the story and try to look at what the kind of rest stops along the way on that story are and see if those are actually true or not, or pick other rest stops that are more in service to the person you aspire to be and start telling that story instead. Because we are creature, like you talked about, like, oh, when you make a video or a podcast, and it's like there's ways of teaching, like you can say, here's the list, or you can do it through storytelling. And I think human beings learn best through story. I think you can tell somebody, here are the steps, but if those steps are elucidated in the context of a powerful story, that's going to take up residence in the human mind and be a much more powerful thing. My point being that story is fundamentally perhaps one of the most powerful things about being human. And when you think about the story you tell yourself about who you are, maybe reflect a little bit on how that's producing outcomes for better or worse in your life.
Beautiful. Is that why you started voicing changes?
Yeah. So we started building this media company about a year ago, and we made an announcement recently. And that's really a function of understanding that as powerful as my podcast has become and as many lives as it has impacted, I'm just one voice. And because we've been doing this for a long time and have built an incredible team and understand best practices in terms of how you manage the sponsorship landscape and how you produce shows of high caliber with great production value, I wanted to be able to leverage that expertise and scale it with other voices out there that I think are incredibly valuable and deserving and worthy of amplification and support. So that's kind of the fundamental premise behind it. And it's exciting to be involved in supporting other voices, because for so long, everything I do is like my voice, which is fine. But also it's like, I want to now like take this thing and make it in service of other people. Because also at some point, like I'm going to be like, I mean, the minute I stop talking and doing like everything grinds to a halt, right? Mm-hmm. So at some point I'm going to be like, maybe I need to step back or, do something else. I want to be able to have this thing where it can last beyond like however long I decide to keep doing what I'm doing.
It's brilliant. So, I mean, I think the universe abhors a vacuum, and no shame on any of these individuals. But, when I look at some of the voices out there now that are loud, man, no wonder, kids are confused these days. And no wonder it feels kind of tough for a lot of us, because, the podcasts, the top performing podcasts for women are about which dudes have you fucked lately, and, or what beauty products have you put on your face, and, why you shouldn't be in a relationship and all the downsides of it. And, or, do I want to go buy this next new fancy thing? And so I think it's really important what you said, which is, anybody who has a story that comes from a deeper why, not just, I want clicks and I want to be, because quickly you'll run down the rabbit hole of shame there. Mm-hmm. But that you share it, and that, I think it's really cool that there are more media companies that come from a spiritual background, not a religious background necessarily, but with something a little bit deeper. So I'm excited to see how that shakes out.
I mean, thank you. All we have is our mind.
Yeah.
And when you reflect on the relationship between consciousness and real world events occurring across the globe, and then you think, well, if you can be in service to elevating consciousness, what is the downstream impact of that? And I think to your point, there's not enough women in podcasting. And you're right. It's crazy that, especially in the kind of self-improvement, self-help space, it's just a brosphere. Like, what is going on? Especially when you think about like the origins of this whole kind of self-improvement world, and you realize like Oprah Winfrey was like the most powerful one, right?
That's true.
I'm really glad that you're doing this, because I do think we need more powerful, strong female voices that are putting, great, helpful information out in the world. I think there's real need for that right now. And the podcast world is in need of a breath of fresh air with all these bros.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. I, I'm pretty big on the fact, like, I mean, man, without you and like, Tim Ferriss, who's become, somebody that I now get to chat with and get to know, like, there's so much I mean, imagine, well, you're a little bit older than I am. Like, I can't believe people share these secrets. Even when I was younger in finance, nobody was telling you how to get there. Nobody was sharing, I'm having tough situations. And so I'm really thankful to all the bros and all the dudes and everybody podcasting who's doing it from this place that they even shared. Like, thank God you guys were willing to throw it out there, because otherwise these were conversations that are hard to have. In my family, this is not like a normal thing to do to even. And talking about addiction was like, we basically still don't do it with the family member that has it. We might not even label it that way. And so I think it's really special. And I'm so thankful. Like, I try to not go like men versus women thing, because Lord, we both got part of them in here. I needed a boy and a girl to get together to create the two of us. And simultaneously, we're a little different, And so, like, there's Gabrielle Lyon, who helps me a lot with like some health things, because I used to think all the stuff that men did, that was the loudest, voice, health wise, like I should do the same thing. Like, oh yes, I should do intermittent fasting. And in fact, like, that's not great if you're trying to get pregnant, actually, turns out. And so anyway, I think it's cool that there's all these different voices coming together, and I'm appreciative for what you guys have done. And I'm excited for the next venture. And I think it's going to be really cool. And I'm going to make sure to subscribe. The last thing I wanted to leave us with today basically was, you now have a relationship for a really long time, a couple of kids, success, the podcast, everything. Do you think you've found happiness?
It's so interesting that you asked me that right now. I am happy that there are many barriers to my happiness that remain, and I think that I could be happier. I still fall prey to workaholism. I still delude myself that the happiness that I lack is on the other side of the next accomplishment or milestone in my career, despite all evidence to the contrary and a million guests on my podcast disabusing me of that notion. It's amazing how persistent that is in the mind. With this phase of my career, I am really intent upon doing the things that I know will drive greater happiness in my life. And those things are my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, and rekindling or reinvesting in my friendships that get shoved to the side because we're so busy and on deadline and too many things are happening. And I can tell you, the older you get, the phone gets heavier when the prospect of calling up that buddy that you haven't talked to in 15 or 20 years. And then investing in more experiences, basically what I'm saying is trying to cultivate greater connection with other human beings, because I like to be left alone. I'm an introvert. I want to just create in a dark room and not have anybody bother me. And I'm perfectly content until I'm not, right? And recognizing that I need those people and that I'm happier when I'm in community is inconvenient, because don't you know all these things that I have to do and how important I am? So the call to action for me is to really put that into motion. And I just got back from India, Dharamshala.
Wow.
I was invited by Arthur Brooks. So for those that don't know, Arthur Brooks used to run AEI, but is now a professor at Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, where he teaches leadership and happiness and runs a lab called the Happiness Lab. And he invited, he's written amazing books, but his latest book he co-wrote with Oprah Winfrey.
No big deal.
It's about happiness. And he invited me and a small group of people to travel to Dharamshala to spend 2 days with the Dalai Lama. He's been going to see the Dalai Lama for the last 11 years. The Dalai Lama is now 89 years old. So I knew this was like, I'm trying to say no, stuff, but this is a yes. This is like a hell yeah, like once in a lifetime opportunity. So my wife and I joined this group, and I was sitting as close as I'm sitting to you, to the Dalai Lama, like 2 days in a row. And Arthur kind of hosted this series of talks and came armed with all of his questions and this journey and this arc that he wanted to take everyone on, but also understanding that no matter what he asked the Dalai Lama is going to tell you what he thinks everybody needs to hear. And the hilarious thing was that was the truth. Like, no matter what question was posed to the Dalai Lama, his answer was essentially some variation on the idea that everything goes back to love. Arthur always talks about how love is not emotion. It's a decision. And that's something he learned from the Dalai Lama. And so the happiness that you lack, the connection that you lack, the thing that eludes you or deprives you of feeling very fulfilled in your life, like all of these things will all be found by cultivating more love in your life. Giving more love is a way to receive more love. So if you are in lack, love is always the answer. And it sounds so cheesy and reductive, but it's incredibly profound. And what he said, which has stayed with me, and I have this little red bracelet on my wrist to prove it and to remind me, if you're struggling to connect with what that means for you or how to feel that sense of love, reflect on a mother's love for a child. And if that's too difficult, look at animals and look at, a mammal mother and how that mother interacts with its baby and try to embody that sensibility and share that, which I thought was a really beautiful way into thinking about and practicing love. So that's like the call to action for me, like I have a lot of work I think I still need to do around that because I'm on the grind and I have goals and ambitions and the like. So it was a really powerful reminder and also a way into this book that I'm in the middle of writing right now that's around change and a means of one of the things I'm struggling with is in order to be a worthy steward of this message that I want to impart, I too have to sit in the seat of the reader or the audience and reflect on the change that I'm still too resistant to make. And do I have the courage to face that? Because it's easy to sit on my laurels and go on podcasts and talk about all these changes I've made and transformation and how I'm this expert on how to go from A to Z when I still have a lot of work to do myself. And so committing to confronting what I'm most reluctant to change about myself, I think begins with what the Dalai Lama had to share, which is my relationship to love, to other people, and to, cultivating the relationships that are necessary in order to live a full and happy life.
Yeah, I remember once I saw Arthur speak at AEI to a group of, even the world leaders, but they're tough and a little crotchety and they want to talk about nuclear arms, really intense things. And Arthur comes on the stage and gives a talk on love to the most grizzled Republican you could meet, right? And so you can imagine just the suits in the audience. And then he's kind of talking about love. And then he plays this orchestral music that's just glorious. And I look over, I might get kicked out of the group for this. We'll see if I'll put it on the podcast. But I see Ted Cruz with a single, a little speaker. And I just thought this man is really special. And
Arthur is a gift. He's such a beautiful human being and somebody I look up to tremendously and has been a mentor to me. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him.
And one other thing is he said something and I'm not going to remember it perfectly, so I'm not going to say it, but he talked about childlike wonder. Don't you sometimes, if you think about it, think about that for a second. You just met with the Dalai Lama, the holiest of the holies, plus Arthur Brooks, plus who else was on that trip, I'm sure. And then the other people, do you ever just sit and think, what the fuck's going on? This is wild.
100%. I'm what happened to my life?
Right?
I reflect back on all these moments of confusion where I couldn't see my way forward and didn't think I was going to get to the next day. And here I am and this is happening. This is not the product of some whiteboard, strategy session. This is mystical and magical and beyond anything I could have ever imagined for myself in a way that I can't possibly make sense of, which brings me back to like the mystical spirituality of all of it and how it begins with that deep inside work of trying to connect with your heart and what is unique about you. We're all unique individuals that came here for, in my opinion, one sole purpose, which is to learn to know who we are and to share our gifts with the world and to grow and evolve along the way.
Beautiful. Let's wrap it there. You're the man. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you guys for being here. If you haven't left a review yet for the Big Deal podcast, I want you to know you are a big deal to me. And so is every single review from you guys. This is a huge commitment from us this year. I want to try to put it all out on the field with this podcast, because if you guys get to have any sort of the feeling like I had sitting here listening to this guy being on this couch right here next to us, I think we might be able to do something special together, guys. All right. See you next week. You're a big deal.
I say that I have it, you know that I got it. No need to look all in a bag. Stunting like this cause I work so hard. I'm the best.
When people feel like they know you and you just open up to everybody, then you just gave them the green light to take advantage of you.
Today I've got Evie Pomporas. She's not just a former Secret Service agent who protected 4 presidents and tons of dignitaries. She's a master of influence, lie detection, and psychological strength.
Nice people can screw you over. Everyone's on their own journey for their own self-interest, and along the way, they may burn you.
And she is going to teach you today how to stop getting played in business, relationships, and life.
If you struggle with people and they take advantage of you, stop talking a lot.
If you've ever wanted to read people like a pro, speak with power, or walk into any room and own it, this is your episode.
Once you set the tone for people on how to treat you, it's done. It's so done.
You have been with the biggest leaders in the world, right?
Yeah.
10 or 12 years with presidents.
I had them either when they were current or in former. So Ford, before he passed away, I had Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Obama, Clinton's. I've had everybody but Reagan.
That is wild.
I wanted Reagan. I heard he was a great guy.
Yeah, he seems like a legend. Having been with these huge world leaders, the best in the world, I'm curious. Yeah, what do you learn?
When you're in the White House, you're in proximity. So a lot of folks don't know. So you're protecting presidents, current and former, and you're also protecting foreign heads of state. So a lot of folks don't know that when a foreign head of state comes to the United States, they would get Secret Service protection. And the goal is that you don't want foreign heads of state being assassinated on U.S. soil. I grew up in an environment, and probably like from my early 20s on, being in an environment around this type of leadership. And without me realizing it, I was getting training. One thing I learned was truly resiliency. I mean, you'd be next to a president. I mean, literally, you're standing next to them and the screen's on and it's a network that doesn't like them and is literally just calling them all the names you could think of. And they had to tune that out and either get back up on stage to give a speech or go out there. And you would see it. Or there was one day, and I forget what it was, but where all the Congress members would come to the White House. Mm-hmm. And there was a name for it. It's escaping me. And it was a day where the First Lady and the President would have to greet them and spend the day with them. But there would be the same members also within there that like literally spewed just horrible things about them. And they would have to come and be gracious. And so I really learned how not to engage in conflict unless necessary, or also not even in conflict, but like to decide what was worth engaging in and what's not, and what's just to dismiss, like what doesn't matter. So you learn how to deal with people, but with grace and class. That was one thing I learned. The other thing that I thought was really smart that they did it was always a circle of people around them. So they created a buffer. So even though there's negative things and chaos going around you, which there always is, you have a select group of people that you've selected. They've gone through your filter system. A lot of them were loyal people. And that buffer of people kept them clear, calm, and they were almost like a barrier to the outside world. So I learned having layers of zones of people. You have your innermost zone. There's not one circle, it's multiple circles. So you've got your intimate circle, which is your people, where there's very high level of trust. You've got an outer zone where it's friendly, but not complete trust. I'll give you some trust.
Yeah.
Then there's the acquaintance zone where you want to network and deal with these people, or you have to. Outer circle where these are people just like looking to just devour you, but you still have to deal with them. So it's almost like these concentric zones.
Yeah.
And so I learned watching that. I didn't realize it till actually the most recent years when people were like, why do you do that? And I kept thinking, well, why wouldn't I do that? I got into the Secret Service 23. So I was exposed to that from a young age and absorbed it. So you learn a lot from the way people carry themselves and you absorb that. So just because I happen to be around them, I absorb those characteristics.
It seems like everybody thinks that authenticity and vulnerability and sharing is the best trait one can have. You know, let me share everything. Let me overshare everything. Let me be authentic by sharing everything. We've kind of forgotten that humans can have good intentions and bad intentions, and you have to guard a little bit what you share publicly. And so I love the idea of like, who are your close friends? And you don't have to treat everybody the exact same. You can treat people kindly everywhere, but you don't have to let everybody in. And I've certainly found that being more public now, and I'm sure you have too. In the beginning, I was like, everybody's my buddy. And then later I realized like, oh no, they're just really charismatic. Like, we're not friends. That's their job, is to like make me feel like I'm their friend. And I think a lot of the world around us is like that. And so, you know, I'd be curious your take. Do you think that being authentic and vulnerable all the time is good? And that's what you should do?
No. This whole vulnerable thing, I always hear it. Here's the problem with that. If I'm going to share something with you, it should be truthful and it should be done genuinely. Like, don't give me a story because you're trying to get me to put my guard down. How about you just be a genuine person?
Yeah.
How about you just be truthful, respectful, and professional, and let things happen on their own organically. And this authentic thing, so that's another thing. Probably the worst person, Codie, to ask these questions. I just, you know, I want to be transparent and honest with people because I feel like they're given things to do and it does not work. And it sabotages their efforts. And then they're kind of at a loss. I don't understand why I'm having problems with people. I don't understand why I don't have better relationships. So being authentic, first of all, what does that mean? Just be genuine. It's not, I think what people think authentic means is I'm going to come in, I'm going to be me, and whoever likes it. You need to bring different versions of you to different conversations and to different people. I'm in business now. You and I were talking a little bit off camera. And when I work with people or have people work with me, I want the business version of you. Yeah. I don't want the version of you that comes in, Evie, I need advice. I don't mind from time to time, but I'm running a business. So if you come in authentically, like, I'm having a horrible day, Evie, I need this, I need that. I'm truly sorry to hear that, but that doesn't work with the business version of me. I can't get things done. So I need this professional, strong version of you to show up for me. That's where this authentic thing leads people. And I do a lot of keynotes. By mistake, I kind of happened to stumble to doing keynotes for big companies. And I mean like Fortune 100 companies. And I'm putting it out there, everybody, so they know, one of the biggest complaints they have is we're getting people in who have a weak work ethic, who are bringing versions of themselves that is not helping the whole mission of the company, that we're having difficult time keeping people, finding the right people, then bringing people who will blend into our culture and make it strong. And there's this heightened level of weakness that's coming out. I'm also an adjunct professor. I see it with my students. Mm-hmm. They are shocked when I hold them accountable for an assignment. They are shocked when I won't accept a late assignment. Shocked. And I'm like, why would I accept it? I gave you outlines. I gave you parameters. I made it very clear to you day one during our interview together before you came to my class, because it's like a job interview, whether you should stay in my class or not, what I expect. But they're surprised when I hold them accountable to what I told you I expect.
That's wild. I mean, I believe it.
Because people say, I expect this of you, but then I do this. So then what we do is we groom people. I may tell you I want this from you, but my behavior says, okay, I know the syllabus says don't hand this late, and that I won't accept it. And, I know I told you on the first day that don't bother handing in a late assignment. But then when you do come to me with a late assignment, then I break and I'm like, okay, give it to me. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I'm the problem. And I'm also not guiding you for the outside world to be your best.
I think I heard you say somewhere, and I really liked it, that, a boundary is something that you actually hold. Otherwise, you're just talking. And I love this. It's like in this world, if you don't keep your promises to yourself, and if you don't keep the promises that you say you will out loud to another, that's probably the worst promise you could break,
Well, you get mad at yourself too.
Yeah.
And that's when people walk all over you. And it's a common thing. People come to me, this person keeps doing this to me. And I'm always like, you realize you play a role. It's not I'm not being mean. It's like, and I'm not blaming you. It's like, you have to always be like, what am I doing that's causing this? Every time I struggle with something or someone, I always go back in, okay, what am I doing that's helping contribute to this circumstance, to this situation, to this environment? So I may not be the whole solution, because it's always 50%, 50% me, 50% you, but I'm going to manage my 50.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with myself. In US culture, we minimize the things we do wrong. I'm an adjunct professor in psychology, so I'll share a little bit of like what I've learned from the different cultures, where if you look at an Asian culture, they're very much more about community and doing the right things for the whole community. And if they do something wrong, they will look at, what did I do wrong and how can I change this? They're a little bit more honest. In US culture, Western culture, we minimize our shortfalls. We like to minimize them. And so you want to find a balance. Like, you don't want to beat yourself up, because I don't think that is healthy. But I think we've gone to a point where we're so extreme. It's not my fault. It's this thing's fault. It's that thing's fault. And again, you can do that. It doesn't serve you. And I think it creates problems for you and struggles for you that you help to cultivate.
Yeah. So what would the solution be for somebody who maybe says, I'm typically a victim, and, this keeps happening to me. I keep having this. I wish it would change. What are the words you tell them? You say, sit down, do X, Y, and Z. You say, keep your promises to yourself. What is the tactical next move to break that habit of blaming everybody else?
Well, the first move is to stop saying that to yourself. It's the words you feed your mind. It's like you're feeding it to your mind. I'm not a victim. I've never used that word in my life. And I, like everybody else, have gone through my share of difficulties and hardships. And again, it varies, what bad thing I go through varies compared to other people. Like, my bad thing may be very bad for me, but for somebody else, it's like, meh, right? Or vice versa. But change the way you talk to yourself. So this, I'm a victim, get rid of that. No, you're not. You're nobody's prey. You're nobody's prey. I am nobody's prey. Change that tone in your head. It always starts first with the way you speak to yourself and the way you groom your mind to think of yourself. One of the things that helped me a lot is I learned to read people well. So now you would say to me, well, you have an unfair training and you are an interviewer, investigator. You don't need all that. You really just need to be less talkative. If you struggle with people a lot and they take advantage of you, stop talking a lot. So there's a couple of reasons why. One reason is I want you to gather intelligence. You got to think of it like you're an intel gatherer. So when you're talking, you're not gathering anything. You're gathering zero. So you want to get good read on them, let them reveal, give people space to reveal themselves. So that's one. So now I'm reading you and getting you. I always reflect back. I'm like a mirror. Tell me about that. Oh, no kidding. Tell me about you, especially if I'm in the dark with something. So that's one. The other thing is, when you're talking, it's very hard to read people. It's a high cognitive load. So the more quiet you can be, the better you're going to be at picking up cues. And even though you can't articulate what that person did that you don't like, you feel it. You feel it. Just the other day, somebody was telling me about something about someone else. And they're like, I just don't feel right with this person. But I keep engaging them because I can't articulate what the reason is. And I'm like, no, you need to listen to that because you're picking something up. You just may not have the skill set yet to define what that is, that cue or that the words or tone or whatever that is they're doing that caused this hiccup for you, but you need to follow it.
Yeah.
Lighten your load. When you go quiet, it's a lower cognitive load. That's why when we did interviews, I was a polygraph examiner with the U.S. Secret Service. I never did criminal interviews alone. Never. I always had a partner. And here's why. And we would say, I'm going to be primary, or you're going to be primary, I'm going to be secondary. And the reason why was because I'm talking to my person, my subject. My load is high, so I'm missing things. I'm trying to figure out what to say, how to say it, read you at the same time, listening to your responses. What should I say next? Oh no, how should I shape this question if I follow up with this? Is there an issue here? But this person here who's sitting quietly next to me is picking up all the things that I'm missing. And so what we would do is we actually had chairs with wheels on them. And so these have wheels. So when I would get stuck, I would organically just wheel back. And it was the cue for my secondary to wheel up and jump in. And then they would pick up all the things that I missed. And they would say, earlier on, you mentioned this. Could you tell me a little bit about that? That's why being quiet is so powerful. It lightens your load. So if a person feels very overwhelmed, or they feel that they're being kind of taken for a ride over and over again, go quiet and really let people reveal themselves. And then the other thing is, don't crush so hard. When you meet someone and let's say you really like them, just don't go all the way in. Mm-hmm. Don't crush so hard, and don't chase the like. We like it when people like us, right? You get the dopamine hit. Who doesn't want to be liked? But the thing is, not everybody is going to be in alignment and in harmony with you. Mm-hmm. And so again, they can be nice, but their value system, belief system, agendas in life are different than yours. And that's going to lead to bumps later on. And so you will save yourself sometimes a lot of pain and hardship if you don't like so hard.
Yeah, I think the first time I realized that was when I started having business partners and I wasn't very good at picking them. And I would crush too hard too fast. And then I would feel bad for pulling back. I would have that little flare, that little thing in my stomach where I thought, oof, we're out of alignment and something's off. But we were too far in. Now I'm like, what am I going to do? Pull away, no longer talk to this person? So this whole inner dialogue. And Chris, my husband, said something great to me, which was, he's like, people are hard to conceal over time. And he said, especially people are hard to conceal in the evening. And I don't know if this is true because we should talk about your time with interrogations and lie detections. But he was saying that one of the favorite things that he liked to do when he did his job in the military was he wouldn't ask the hard questions in the morning, when a coffee was happening with a subject that they were interested in. It would typically be in the evening after they were together for a long day. Lots of stuff was happening. They weren't exactly sure, when the next coffee would come, when the next water. And that's when the person would kind of reveal. They'd be tired. It would be hard to keep up a veneer. And I thought that was really clever because, everybody kind of looks better with a fresh cup of coffee. But with you in particular, God, some of your work on interrogation and lie detection I thought was so interesting. I was wondering if you had any stories about a time you caught someone lying and how you could actually tell that they were.
It was an applicant for a job. And he was having a hard time passing his polygraph. He was being polygraphed in the U.S. Secret Service. To be an agent, you have to take a polygraph and pass it. And it's a hard thing for some people. And so this applicant, who's like a football player, very well liked by everybody, takes his first polygraph. He doesn't fail it. He doesn't pass it. He's what's inconclusive. And I'm asked to come in to give him a fresh face because we would have this rule. You never wanted the same person to interview you a second time. You want a clean face. So this young man in the interview was telling me about, you go through, I can't give too much away, but in the polygraph for the U.S. Secret Service, you ask them what crimes they've committed in life. And most people will tell you, no, I've never done anything. Well, I get very specific and granular, and I go through each crime. And often people are like, no, I've never been arrested. And, I was like, that's not what I asked you. You can commit a crime and get away with it. In fact, in the U.S., the data shows 80% of crime goes unsolved. We have a lot of crime. So as I'm speaking to him, somehow, without getting too much in the weeds, he started to reveal to me a date he went on with a woman while he was in college, and that he had been intimate with her, but then after the fact, she left very upset. So I hear this and I'm, okay, this is bothering him. Why? And I had him talk me through the date. And then I had them talk me carefully through their intimacy and how that transpired. And, in that, he revealed, I held her wrists down. She was very upset. She was crying, how she left. And without him saying rape, he described to me what would be considered a rape. Wow. So he never said it. But what he did is he gave admissions. I held her wrists down. She said it hurt. She was crying. She left in tears. And there were other things he shared. All these things together, when you put them together, paint that picture of this is what he did to her. And so that's how I knew what he had done. So actually, I can't recall at the moment. I don't think I even polyed him. I got all the admissions and I knew in that moment, I'm like, it's not going to happen for him, and nice guy, very nice guy. He seemed super nice in the chair, but you could see he's having this moment of looking back and thinking, what did I do? But he's telling me the story through his lens.
Yeah.
Through his lens, he's like, well, she said no. I'm like, how many times did she say no? She said no the whole time. And so all these different pieces. And that would be, those are very good examples of, don't wait for people to tell you, I did this or I did that. They give you what's called admissions. And they're little peeks behind the veil to show you. But what you have to do, and what I learned to do, and I still do, is when they give you a little peek, ask them a question that helps the curtain get pulled back a little bit more. Don't just let it go. So like what I did with him was, okay, when you held her wrists, what did she say? Okay, I would always use the words they would give me. So never in that interview did I say the word rape, or that you violated her. I used his words because it made him more comfortable to say more. I reflected back. It's called reflecting language. And it's something you can use with anybody because it makes people feel a little bit more that you're in harmony with them. So when you speak to me, I'll reflect language you use back to show you I'm listening to you. And admissions are powerful. Everyone's always look for the confession and whatever somebody does to you. I want him to tell me he did this or she did that or they stole that money or they cheated on me. You don't need that. You need the admissions to put a picture together. You don't need to be right, and they don't even need to know that you know. It's for you to know so that you can make sound decisions for yourself.
Yeah, because you're right. A lot of times people these days will say, I need them to fully admit it. I need to get through this and I'll be fully healed when they say this.
You will never be,
right?
You will not be fully healed because there's no such thing as being fully healed. You recover and you become resilient and you bounce back. I believe in that. And you can take what's happened to you. But if you're looking to heal, by the time you heal, if you're even able to, like the next slap in the face is going to come and then the next slap in the face. So you're spending your whole life healing. It's just going to be, life is a revolving door of just people that are going to come in your life. And some of them are going to be knuckleheads. And they're just going to hit you and crush you, knock you down. And you just have to become resilient and push back. So I think people also this whole heal thing, it's not fair to people, because I also know a lot of people that think something's wrong with me because I can't fully heal from what happened to me. And sometimes the stories are so egregious where I'm like, how could you ever fully heal from that? I appreciate the obstacles that I've gone through. I'm not saying they don't hurt, but all I'm saying is it's not fair to tell people fully heal, and then people feel inadequate because they can't fully heal. You don't need to heal to be resilient. Those two things are not the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, you have been through some serious things. I mean, you were on scene at 9/11 by the World Trade Centers, as far as I read online. And, not only were you there and chose to run towards explosions, but it kind of was happening all around you. So many people could have been through something like that and said, I'm a victim and this is what happened to me and I could remember all that. And still you chose not to do that.
Here's the thing. When you relive a bad experience or even a bad fight or bad anything, it's rumination, right? And again, I'm going to go back to my psychology teaching as an adjunct. When you ruminate over something, you notice how sometimes it can be addicting.
Yeah.
It actually gives you the same high. It actually activates the same part of the brain that gets activated when you do coke. And it almost creates, it activates that part of the brain. And so for folks to hear that, it's like, no, like that's why you kind of get almost like sort of addicted to like playing this record. And if you seek therapy, there's nothing wrong with it. There's some people that really genuinely need it. I always tell people, go find somebody who's helping you move forward, not retell your pain. I actually had dinner the other night with a woman, and she had been years ago here in New York City. There was a Long Island Railroad shooting, and there was a gunman who opened fire on people on the Long Island Railroad. It was many, many years ago. And she and I were talking because I used to intern for a woman named Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy. And McCarthy's husband was on that train. He was killed. Her son was shot and he was paralyzed. Wow. And the woman I happened to be having dinner with, unbeknownst to me, it was a group dinner, says, I know Carolyn. And I said, how do you know her? She's like, because I was on that train. I was shot twice. Wow. And I said, I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're okay. And we started talking. And she used to tell me, every year we had this dinner and get together. And she said, I stopped going. I said, why? She's like, I didn't want to relive it. She's like, it wasn't helping me to relive something horrible that happened to me. She's like, I wanted to let it go.
Rare and so important. Most founders think they have a traffic problem, so they throw money at ads, more content, more clicks. But the truth is, your site visitors aren't the problem. Your follow-up is. If someone visits your store, adds to cart, then disappears, most platforms just let them leave. OmniSend doesn't. It triggers abandoned cart flows, win-back emails, and even browse abandonment messages all on autopilot. It's not just email, it's email plus SMS with smart segmentation built in. You can trigger a discount code to someone who clicked but didn't buy. You can follow up with a new product after someone made a purchase. You can even A/B test everything to find what actually converts. And you don't need 5 different apps to do it. OmniSend gives you all the tools without the Frankenstein stack. If you're bleeding leads and calling it low conversion, stop. You don't need more eyeballs. You need a machine that closes. That's what OmniSend is. And I think about those moments, like the scary moments in our lives and whether we choose to lean into them or not. You've kind of built an entire career around leaning into them, it seems like to me.
By mistake.
Like I think about you because you were a police woman.
I started in the NYPD as a recruit, yes.
And so you also kind of would sit across the table from criminals and from predators and from what I would anticipate as scary people. What are predators actually like? What are criminals like?
You would think for the most part that these were just like apex predators, or they would look like it, and they didn't. I remember one interview I did. It was a father. He had 3 kids, and there had been, I want to be careful how I say it because it's delicate, but basically child pornography on his devices. And the police needed help understanding what was going on. I interview him. What he ended up doing is he looked like nothing. Like he looked like 160 pounds soaking wet, maybe lighter. I thought I was like, I could take you. And I'm, But when he walked into the room, I was always surprised to see would walk in the room. And like what he used to do, which was clever, which a lot of them do, he used his kids to get them to bring other kids to their home. And they would go downstairs in the basement and he would shoot videos with all these little kids. And so you would think when I tell you that, you're waiting for this like apex predator to walk in that looks it. You would never pick him out. In fact, he looked like somebody who would be bullied. And that's why I always caution people, like bad people. And I always be careful with that word. Like it's not about what people look like. You don't know what's inside someone. You know, we had this saying in the polygraph, in the interview room, like anybody is capable of anything at any given moment in time if given the opportunity.
Wow.
So the way to protect yourself without being cynical, it's not about being cynical, is assess people's behavior. That's why you can't look at someone. I always say don't label the person like labels are for clothing. Label the behavior. And like be quiet and give people time to see what they're about. Yeah. And they will reveal it. But people who prey don't look like prey. And you know what's also interesting, what I learned about predators, do you know who they prey on? Kids, number one, because they're easy to prey on. Women, number two, because as much as I may not want to say it, but it's just the truth, physically, biologically, like we are, in a sense, the other gender, male gender, is just physically stronger than us. So they can, to some degree, overpower us. It depends, you know, not everybody, but for the most part. So there's that physical thing there. And then the elderly. 3 populations that are preyed upon the most by predators. So if I tell you that, then what does that tell you about a predator?
They're pretty weak.
Exactly. I'm not picking on the guy that's going to give me a run for my money. I want easy prey. So a big part of it is your mindset. Like if people think, and this is for anybody, it's like if people feel like you got a little bit of crazy, they're going to think twice.
That's so true.
I'm sorry. It's true. You want people to be like, I'm not telling you to go around being crazy person. You know,
I listen to Evie.
but you just want people to feel, I don't want to cross a line with her. Or with him or whoever. Just let them feel it. And that has to do with respect. It has to do with the way you carry yourself. It has to do with what you emanate out there.
Yeah, I want to get into that because you have really specific actions on that you do. And
I thought you were going to teach me about business.
Well, I was going to
Cody.
say it does apply to business too, because there are business predators everywhere.
Yes.
And they also go after the people that look like they're going to fold, you know, and I think there's a lot of reasons why, if you're pretty serious in business, there's a great reason to like never settle a case. If somebody comes after you and you think that it's ridiculous and they're just trying to be litigious, it's like, no, I will go and spend much more than it would ever take to settle with you because I refuse to allow this precedent to happen. And I think in business, you have to kind of show that you're really not to be trifled with and that you're not scared of coming out against somebody because bullies exist in business like everywhere else. In fact, maybe more because a lot of people think that business is a zero-sum game. And in order for me to win, you have to lose. And so those people can be a whole different type of predator. And if you come out and, you know, and to be fair, it happens a little bit more to women, I think, than men because they don't, you know, a lot of times I have a couple guys who are very public and big public figures too. And, you know, the things that come after them are slightly less than they do me. And so I have had to, in some ways, come out and really sort of establish myself and say, like, I'm not going to tolerate that. You're using my IP. That's infringement. That's libel. This is your chance to have a lawsuit. I don't care if you post it online about it. It's no problem. And so it's unemotional. But it's like, you know, I think I've gotten comfortable enough with it by this idea of like some form of, not that they're bad people, but just justice in the instance. Like if I can handle going after somebody that is operating in a bad manner or in bad faith, and I have enough money and I have enough like capacity to deal with it, but I don't, just because I don't want to, then they are going to go after the next version of the child, the elderly, the woman. They're going to go after somebody who's like an easier target next. And so I do think, as a good business person, you have like some responsibility to be like, no, I'm going to bury you if you act like that, because we don't allow that in society. There are like repercussions to negative actions. And that's like why we have the society we have. But the part that I was curious about for you is I read somewhere about a study that talked about the way that predators choose their prey. And I thought it was so applicable for probably how business predators prey too. Do you remember that study about?
Yeah, there's multiple studies, but
Okay.
essentially like anybody who picks prey or even targets, they look at the person, they look who can go easy, they look for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give them a suitable target, I have to have a suitable target to prey.
Yeah.
If I don't have a suitable target, I'm not going to take it. So you want to think about that. Like, am I giving you a suitable target?
Mm-hmm.
So I can negotiate with you, but in the back of my mind, I'm not a suitable target. So I want to make sure that person feels I'm not a suitable target. And I'm with you. I don't really go after, I'm busy, right? I got things going on.
Yeah.
But there may have been like a couple of times where somebody may have crossed into my lane where I'm like, no, that's wrong on principle. And I'm going to make sure you know it.
Yeah.
And so even in business, and I agree with you because it's like, no, a hard no. You think you can't do this and think twice. People afraid, when they think you're not going to bite back, it's a lot of times we think like, if I just mitigate and just leave it alone, I can control the monster or I can control this person. No, like when you know somebody is like not good, the more you pull back, the more dominant they become. You create more space for them to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's strategy in avoiding conflict. But when you create dynamics where you give this person so much space to kind of dominate over you, and then you have to be careful because it can happen incrementally and over time, and then you're in this really subservient role, and you're thinking, how did I get here? And now you can't get out from under it. And business is like that. Just because there are the behaviors that people may have in crime doesn't mean I have to be a criminal to hurt and prey on people.
Yeah.
I can manifest that in business. It's a power trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's a power trip, like serial killers or serial rapists or people that do that stuff. It's a power trip.
Mm-hmm.
They do it because I want power over you. So in business, I hear it all the time when I speak at companies, when they bring me in. I can't tell you, especially afterward, people will come to me and say, I have this boss, or I have this client, or I have this, and they're being bullied. Yeah. How do I handle it? Tell me what to do. And a big part of the issue that they have is you've created a system around you where you're waiting for these folks to not behave this way because they shouldn't behave this way because you think it's wrong. And I get you think it's wrong, but they don't think that they're wrong. They think, what? I'm being like a boss. I'm being this. I'm being like, this is the way it's done. Change the dynamic and system around you so that people aren't crossing over into you. But it becomes hard. It's a hard thing to undo. Like if you're in a business environment, you've been there for years and people have just been crushing you and dominating you. I don't mean to be negative, but there's almost no way to fix that. You have to leave and go somewhere else and start anew and start from the beginning. Because once you set the tone for people on how to treat you, it's done. It's so done.
That's fascinating. So let's say that person who has been sort of beat up and dominated at work goes to a new place and it's their first day and it's in their first meeting in the business. How do they show up like physically and verbally so that people take them more seriously and like put a little respect on their name?
Don't talk a lot in that first meeting. Say nothing. Half the meetings I go to, I say nothing. You don't need to talk. Nobody cares. Like, unless you have something of value to say, you don't need to say anything. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Evie. Thank you for having me here. I'm done. So unless you're contributing, don't talk. Show up. Be serious. Dark colors. I'm not being funny. Just wear dark colors. Wear a suit jacket. If they're not, I did something with my husband because he just retired from the Secret Service and Homeland Security. We were doing an event where he was I'm like, come speak with me. He's like, oh, okay. And everybody there at this event was dressed down. And he's like, oh, I don't need to dress up. I said, no, you're going to wear a suit. And I don't point at him when I do this. I'm like, no, I want you to wear a suit. And no one's seen you before. And you're going to be on that stage and I want you to own it. And the fact that you chose to wear a suit shows everybody I respect you and honor you. And I showed up in a suit when everybody else is dressed down. It also says something very powerful about you. And sure enough, afterward, he's like, you were so right to make me wear that suit. So I just want you to think, what presence do I bring? And what am I trying to emanate? Dark colors. And for ladies, I'm sorry, drop the pinks, drop the yellows, I like light colors, but what message am I trying to bring? You know, the day you're showing up is not the day to try that new blue eyeshadow. I want to be honest with people, because when you show up authentically you, and then you're scratching your head, why didn't anyone respect me? It's bring that version of you. When I was an agent, I hardly ever wore my hair down. Hardly ever. Now I
noticed that about you in videos. A lot of times it's up.
Always. And I'm used to it, but even as an agent, I wanted to be taken more seriously. I had really long blonde hair. There was no way I was going to cut it. I already really took on very masculine attributes to it, an extent. So I was like, the hair I'm keeping. You know, when other girls were cutting it off, I'm like, no way the hair is staying. So I wanted to hold on to that part of my femininity. I don't want to lose it, but it was always up. Because if I showed up like this for an interview, like, hey, how's it going? Right? You have to just think of what version you're bringing. If I'm doing, like, even to this day, if you're in a room with all male, I'm going to wear pants. Just little things you can do. I'm going to show up. I'm going to sit at the table. My hands are going to be on the table. I'm not going to sit on my hands like I'm 5.
Interesting.
So I'm going to sit. I'm going to be here. I'm not going to have my phone on the table. I don't care if everybody else is on their phone. I'm here. I'm alert. You're also telling people I'm alert. I'm watching everything that's going on around me. Forget the whole get off your phone because it's not good for you, because it's not. Put that aside. I'm here. I see you and I see you and I see you. My head's on a swivel. I know what's going on. I'm paying attention. You just set the tone. This lady knows what's going on around her, or guy.
It's a really good point, because you're also very pretty. And I think...
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, when I was younger and starting out, I did the cut my hair thing, which is a terrible mistake for me, but wasn't a good look. But I cut it really short because I thought that I wouldn't be taken seriously. I was kind of cute, you know, whatever, little Latina. And I did get taken more seriously because of that. Because immediately, whether we want to admit it or not, good looking, and I like makeup, you like makeup, and our hair looks nice, and we wear a certain thing, there's an immediate trigger and judgment. And then at some point you get to become enough of a pro that you almost have to go the opposite way. Like, I don't know if you've ever found this, but I now find that I dress a little bit more feminine now than I ever have before, because I come in like a fucking freight train half the time on the internet, and it's intimidating. It's not relatable. And so I'm almost opposite that.
Well, the thing with social media and the internet, people know who you are now before they actually meet you. Yeah. So they already have an impression of you. And that's where people also need to be careful. The first time they meet you nowadays, is not in person. It's on the internet. So watch what you post.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just watch what you post, watch what you share. But I do agree with you. So you have that ability now, because you've built yourself to that point, to show up a little more how you want to show up. When I first started doing the news, you brought up to bring up the hair thing again. One of the things I was told was to cut my hair, because so I could be taken a little bit more seriously when I did the news. And there was a window where I did it, not too much. I did it a little bit. Then I started pulling it back. And then I just was like, you know, I gave up so much I don't want to say it, but as a woman, I let go of so many things when I was an agent. And like my hair thing is just a psychological thing where I'm like, I'm not losing the hair, I'm not losing the makeup. Yeah. I remember one day I was at the White House and we were in what they call the down room. And it was like the morning shift where you start at 5 a.m. I would wake up at 3 a.m. I'd pull my hair back, but I'd wear a nice suit. I'd do my makeup. And I still wanted to hold on to a part of me. And I remember one day, one other female agent walked in that morning. It was like 5, 6 a.m. I can't remember. She's like, why do you bother? She's like, why do you do that? Like, why do you bother? I remember looking at her. I'm like, well, I bother for me. And if I can't look my best in the White House, where am I going to look my best?
That's so true. You're like, there's one spot.
And I just didn't want to fall into that space because I would see a lot of females fall into that, where you don't have to sacrifice. I don't have to talk like a guy or act like a guy or be a guy to be respected. There's a balance. And so I held on to that part for me. So I'm not going to shop at Joseph A. Banks. Sorry, Joseph A. Banks. For my suit, because I want to fit in.
Yeah, you got to draw a line somewhere. But I do think like the more you're a pro, the more you get to draw that line. So if you feel like you can't be authentically yourself to come to a job yet, and that is somehow important to you, that you can wear whatever you want, do whatever you want, get better, because the better you are, the more you get away with.
Well, bring your authentic business self.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bring your authentic business self to the job. That's it. It's bring the version of you that resonates at that job, not the version of you that goes clubbing or to the bars or hanging out or to Coachella. Like that version of you, although it's authentic, it doesn't go there. Even sometimes my people that work with me or for me, if I have an event, I will, if I know that they don't wear suits a lot or they dress a certain way, I'm like, we're going here, I want a suit.
Yeah.
And they know me. I'm like, it's not that I'm not loving who you are, but we need to adapt to this environment that we're going to, and you're going to bring that version of you.
It's actually a gift to say that to some people when they're younger, because, you know, if you want to get paid like a pro, you should dress like a pro. And thankfully, we both learned that because of your background. I was in finance and investment banking. Like, it just wasn't an option. You wore a suit. That's just what happened. But I think a lot of younger people these days, that's just, the world's changed so much. I mean, I'm not that old, but I had to wear pantyhose. I bet you had to wear stuff like that too. Like pantyhose if I wore a skirt. And now, you know, like I was in my office the other day and there were like two people with like 6-inch crop tops, like belly buttons showing. And I was like, not today. Not today. Like, listen, we have people come in the office. You got a great looking 6-pack, but like, it's not for here. It's just not appropriate. Like, unless you want my husband coming in a, you know, crop top, and nobody wants to see that hairy, you know, like it's not necessary.
But it's also, here's the thing, it's also an extension of you, Codie.
Yeah.
So if I hire you and you work for me, you're an extension of me, of my brand, of who I am, my ethos. Like you are by proximity tied to me. And so I want the version of you that works best with the brand and culture that I'm trying to create. And if it's not that, then I appreciate your authenticity, but that's not, when you do that, you make it about yourself. So what you're also saying is, I'm not a team player. I just care about me, and I dress for me, and I do me, and whoever likes me. And again, you can do that, but you will be isolating yourself from opportunities and from people wanting to bring you in. Like, you want to be adaptable. You know what the key to being powerful in life is? And survival? Be adaptable. I can adapt. You throw me anywhere, I will adapt. I will morph. I will blend. I will do. It's still the genuine part of me, but I'm adapting. When I went to Coachella, I looked like I was supposed to be in Coachella when I was in the Secret Service. When I went to,
you went to Coachella with the Secret Service?
I went when I was protecting Barbara Bush, which is George Bush's daughter. So I was her assistant detail leader. So I was the person who traveled with her, and I had a team. And so with her, the big thing was, because people didn't recognize her. When she was with Jenna, they were together, they knew the Bush twins. But when she was alone, you couldn't really tell. So to not draw attention to her, we would blend in. So if I'm going to Coachella, I'm not going to show up in my sunglasses and a suit, because right then and there, I'm drawing attention to her. Yep. So I would dress in a way where I was still tactically sound, but I blended in the environment for safety reasons.
That's fascinating. I'm just trying to picture a bunch of Secret Service agents.
We were at Coachella. And you know what's wild? I think we saw Taylor Swift, and I had no idea who Taylor Swift was. She's like, oh, we're going to go see Taylor Swift. I said, who? She's like, what do you, who? I was like, who's that? She's like, you don't know who that is?
We got to find this picture of like all the hot Secret Service agents at Coachella in outfits.
We were backstage. I had no idea who Miss Swift was. And apparently my protectee was good friends with her. And so, you know, but still I'm like, wait, we got to be careful. She's like, it's Taylor. I'm like, I don't care. I don't know the people around this person.
You start frisking Taylor Swift. That would have been good.
So, but well, actually I've magged quite a few celebrities. I didn't
What does mag mean?
magged. So I would run magnetometers over them.
Oh, like a
and I
metal
would search
detector.
them. Yeah, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I don't know who you are. And just because you're somebody out there, it doesn't mean that you're not capable. I mean, you would have people, yeah, I would come across all sorts of stuff. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and, at the end of the day, only downside for you. Like, who cares if you have to frisk them?
I did my job. I don't, my goal was to protect, and it's probably the most powerful person in the world or the people around them. And so I was very thorough.
Yeah. God, it must
Nicely
be so
thorough.
annoying how many questions you get asked about this, because I am restraining myself. But do people just ask you the weirdest things about your time in the Secret Service?
They do. When I was an agent, I would lie to people. I never told people what I did. I didn't want to ask questions.
What was your go-to?
I would go to was a hairdresser. And the reason was because my mother was a hairdresser. So I grew up around it.
So you could talk the talk.
I knew what it was. I helped her in the salon. Like, I would sweep the hair from the floor. She actually had me shampooing people when I got older. I literally helped. And so I knew how to address people when they ask questions. And when I said that, oh, okay.
Just went away.
Yeah. And nowadays I answer like to a point, probably like your husband, right? Like
Totally.
It's hard. You want to share things, and then there's a part of you that there's a humility to it where you don't want to put it out there like that. Like, I share to help. And even if I share stories, I always think I'm not sharing a story to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
If I share a story, I want to make sure that the reason I share the story is adding value, or there's a lesson or something I'm trying to share that helps the other person, that I'm not just sharing it to share.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, the worst one he gets asked is like, how many people have you killed?
Oh my God, I knew you were going to say that.
Jesus
How
Christ.
many people have you
Yeah,
killed?
it's happened in front of me a few times. The first time I was flabbergasted. I'm like, I never,
Yeah.
I don't know. I would never ask that. It's almost like asking an even worse version of body count, Like, hey, what's up? How are you? How many people have you slept with? You're like, what? Why would you ever ask somebody
Because
that?
stuff like that's glorified. If you watch
Yeah.
video games, media stuff, it seems like it's not a thing, and it's a horrible. Like, I've been asked that.
Really?
Quite a few times. Like, who have you killed? Have you killed? Probably not to the extent he has. And I'm like,
What do you respond?
I don't.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just a dumb question. Like, I don't mean to call people. It's just a really insensitive thing. Now, I've not been to the theater of war, so I have nowhere near like that type of exposure experience.
Yeah.
But that's like, to take a human life is like it's just like a horrible, horrible thing.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, I mean, people are nuts and will ask all sorts of wild questions. But I do think your change of like, thank God there are people today that are willing to share some of the experiences that they feel comfortable putting forward, because then we get to learn. We get to learn from your experience.
Yeah.
And when Chris talks about stuff that he likes to bring up, I get to learn. I learn a ton about leadership from him, But the cool thing, and I bet your husband's the same, like, I'll hear new stories from him all the time, because he doesn't bring it up that much. And he'll be like, yeah, that one time with that Afghan warlord. And I'll be like,
No.
I've never heard of this before. What are you talking about? But yeah, he's kind of silent.
I want to say this. The way somebody's really tough or strong, they don't advertise the stuff they've done. The quietest people were the most lethal people.
Mm.
And my husband's like that. Like, he will barely talks about nothing, and like, he could break you like nothing. And so he's done so many things. So I always respect and admire. For anybody, you want to know who's tough? It's the guy or gal that doesn't need to tell you how tough they are, because they just are, and they know it.
And they often don't dress like it. Like my husband, if you saw his outfits, I'm like, is this a fourth grader's birthday party? Like, what are we doing today? It's like a tie-dye shirt, corduroy shorts, and like, he calls them Jesus sandals.
Because he doesn't care.
He doesn't. He has nothing to prove, that dude.
He doesn't care.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to that thing. Like, the better you are, the more things you can get away with, and the less you got to project. And so, like, if you don't like where you are today, just keep trying to be better. And then I do feel like you get to assert your will on the world a lot more. you know, and like one of the other things that I think is really interesting about you, and then I have another friend who has like, I don't know if I would call it similar background, but Chris Voss, who was in the FBI. And what I always find interesting with Chris is his intonation and how he uses his voice. But I had never met another woman who had done, because I can't mimic Chris Voss. He's got this crazy, you know, baritone voice.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a lot of lessons that you've learned about, like, how do you communicate in order to be respected as a woman? And how does your voice change matter in the way that you respect? I know there's a word for it, but I can't remember what it is.
It's the term is called paralinguistics. So it's what you sound like when you speak. And it's actually truly for both men and women, because some men have high voices. There's a couple of things. So some people organically have a stronger tone, and men typically have a deeper tone. For women, you just want to find your truest, genuine, deepest tone. You know, hi, I'm Evie. Hi, I'm Evie. So you want to find that tone. And sometimes over the years, you have to think of like your voice, it captures things that you've accumulated over your lifetime. Maybe you were in abusive relationships, or you had parents saying, be a good girl, or don't talk, or don't this, don't that. So our voice captures all that stuff. So your true voice is not your true voice, the one you use. So you want to really think about, what do I sound like? I always tell, and I talk about this a lot with companies, when I have people saying, nobody listens to me. And I'll say to them, well, what do you sound like? The majority of communication is not what you say, it's what they hear. So listen to your voice. I was lucky in that when I would conduct interviews, I would have to record myself, so I would hear my voice. And then when I left and I began doing the news, I had to watch myself and hear myself, which is really messes with you. And I even had to step up my game even more. And I actually took voice and speech classes at an acting school. People ask me, what do I do for my voice? And I tell them, hands down, go to acting school, take a voice and speech class. One, they'll teach you to use your voice. They teach you to project your voice. And then they put you in front of other people, and you have to take on roles where you have to use energy and do it in front of other people. And it's a great way to build your confidence. But I learned to use my voice, because if I'm talking about an attack or shooting, because I cover national security and law enforcement issues for NBC, I can't sound like this.
No.
You know, I have to strengthen my voice so that the listener can believe that I know what I'm talking about. So think of your tone. The other thing is project out. So when you're speaking, own what you say. I go back to my college students, where I'll have them ask, I'll ask a question and I'll say, tell me about blah, 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 blah. And I'll pick on them. And when they answer, and I'm like, I can't hear you. And I will tell them, I'm like, this is the place to make mistakes. Own your voice. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Nobody cares. And so I always try to please project your voice. It's okay. I'm not telling you to, it just means project means just make sure people can hear you. It's very also annoying to the listener. I can't hear you. I don't have time to keep asking you to repeat yourself. Just say it. Let's work together and move on. That's the other part of it, projecting your voice. And then the other thing to think about when you speak is make sure, and this is very dominant today for no matter what gender you are, is, hi, I'm Evie. Hi, I'm here with Codie Sanchez. Hi, I'm Evie. I'm here with Codie Sanchez. I said the same thing, but I'm speaking different. So you always want to go down when you speak. Those are very simple things to do for your voice.
How many people do you think sound on the uptick typically?
A lot.
Is that a majority? People do not even realize that they sound that way.
No, I think most people speak like that because I think it's a generational thing. I think it's just what's dominant in the culture right now. So what I hear, I absorb. My husband sometimes will do it sarcastically in front of our little one. And I tell him, I'm like, please don't do that. I don't even want her mistakenly to start speaking like that. So it does happen, and you'll hear men and women do this. So just things to be conscious of when you speak. So So if people don't listen to you, or if you share an idea, this is another thing I hear in business meetings. I shared this idea and then nobody paid attention. And then somebody else said it and everyone paid attention to this person. And my first thing is, what did you sound like when you shared that idea? Did you sprinkled it out there like very lightly, and then this person took it and they owned it?
Yeah. The other part too is really pondering what you're going to say first. What I find a lot that happens with people who aren't listened to is they talk a lot, to your point. They're unstructured in their thoughts. I haven't been as thoughtful about tone, so I'll have to think about that.
Is fine.
Yeah.
You're good.
Good. Thanks. But they have this wide ranging concept that they want to have that could have been distilled into 3 sentences. And so that's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's like, before you come up with your idea, can we make it real brief? Hey, I think that we should start a podcast, and I think that we should have a former Secret Service member on it. What do you think about that? Who should we choose? As opposed to like, yesterday I was thinking about the fact that we might want to have a podcast with somebody from the Secret Service because like they're super in the news right now, and maybe what we would do, and you're like, fucking, that's too much. I'm already bored. And so
land the plane.
Yeah, land the plane.
There's actually there's science that shows the more verbose you are, the more words you use when you speak, the less credible you appear. So when you can get to your point with less words, you actually appear more credible.
So do a lot of companies hire you then to teach their teams how to do this too?
No, I don't do it. I could, I suppose, but I'll do keynotes.
Yeah.
So I get asked to go to big companies and I'll give a keynote. I don't have between like doing the news and all the different things I do. Yeah. You could do training, I suppose. Like I do get asked, yes. I get asked, okay, can you come train our people? And maybe business-wise, Cody, you could give me some guidance.
Just
maybe
add
I'll launch that
to
way.
Your keynote,
I can learn how to do that because I work with a lot of agents too who you had to master it. A lot of people don't realize like we were liaisons more so than anything. So I was a liaison for the US government. So when I would go overseas, I would have to bring my best negotiating skills and speaking skills to deal with foreign governments, which often didn't like you, but you had to really monitor how you spoke. I mean, you were a diplomat. And so you would have to be able to deal with conflict, debate, disagree, and speak well without causing problems where the White House is getting a call and like this agent Pompers you sent, she's a disaster. Don't send me somebody else. Like you didn't want that phone call coming in because you were a hothead or inconsistent or not reliable or didn't speak well and couldn't negotiate well. Like you were representing the US government when you would travel. So one thing in the US Secret Service, because I've probably dealt with maybe a third of the foreign countries in the world. And so it's a big weight because if you say or do the wrong thing, you could really hinder international relations. Even though you're looking at it, well, you're coming from a security standpoint. No, I'm representing the US government. So to them, I'm like, I might as well just be hanging out in the White House all day with the president, hanging out like his best buddy because I represent him and the country. The other thing too is we would have to negotiate and deal a lot with staff, whether it was White House staff, whether it was other congressional staff. And again, your appearance and demeanor matters. You can't just come in like a thug and bully your way, strong your way in. Like you have to really bring a very professional, respectful self. And sometimes you would be dealing with very special personalities and you had to be very mindful. I never wanted, and to this day, I don't want to give anybody a reason to say she said this and because she did this or she said that, she's unprofessional. It's like I never wanted to give anybody that gift.
It also is like a power play, I imagine, a lot of these negotiations, because yes, it's about security, but it's, oh no, I want the president to come through this way so that all my people can see him. And I want this to happen over here. And actually my flag should be here and his flag should be there. And I imagine all of that is a negotiation where not only do you have to quote unquote win, because you do need to have X happen in order to keep security, but also you can't make them mad. So you have like two bosses there, which is...
You can't offend them. You can't make them mad. Like there was a really difficult line to cross. You can't be hot-headed. Sometimes it's as simple as I was at one event in one country. They wanted to have a meeting with the president. And this country shows up to where I'm at. And I'm like, I'm not the decider, but you can't go in. So I call White House staff over and I'm like, hey, this country's here. I'm not going to say what country. Very, trying to find the right word. Very intense country in behavior. Every country had their behavior. And I'm like, come here. They want to meet with the president. Come talk to them. So they send this White House staffer who's a very nice, super nice person, but comes in a little bit mouse, like very soft. And they literally, the delegates encircled this White House staff member. And the White House staff member was trying very nicely to say, there's no time for him to meet with you today. We can try. And they were very offended by it. How could your president not make time for our president? And it started to turn into like, I'm like, they're going to just devour this guy. And I had to step in and say, hey, why don't we calm down and we'll find a resolution, and then it turned on me and I was just like, oh, no. Oh, no. And I told the White House staffer, leave and go come back with 5.
Yeah.
But you have to bring strength as well. So that's a really good example of when this White House staffer showed up, all good intention, came very nice. And you can't show up very nice with this country. This is a country that'll eat you alive. So you want to bring your professionalism, you want to be respectful, but you want to bring that essence like, hey, why don't you calm down? You don't need to say it, but you exude that strength because then people won't cross that line.
Yeah. Is much of the negotiation that you learned in that job and others like pre-preparation? Like almost really, it seems like a lot of the moves you make, X situation happens. You don't just really react. You kind of have to take a minute, think about what's the context, who am I combating in some situation, and then what's my prep that needs to be done. Like, is most of negotiation one and communication one in the pre-preparation, not the actual like activation? I mean, even your like, okay, we're going to go in, you're primary, and I'm going to like slide back thing.
Roll back.
Roll back, right. These all seem very... like you're spending a lot of time prepping for almost everything that you're doing. Is that right?
It depends. The more you prep, the better prepared you are, the more confident you are. So over time, you do less prep because you know what to do.
Yeah.
But anytime if you're talking interviews, if I did an interview with a partner, we never walked in cold. We sat down, we went through our questions. What are we going to say? Who's going to be primary? Who's going to be secondary? What do we think we should ask? How do you think this? We always plan that out. There's something also called predictable dialogue, which means you may go in to do a business pitch. And there's different ways it could go. The one could be like, great, I love this. Or I want more information. Or are you joking? Whose idea is this? This is the dumbest thing I ever heard. So predictable dialogue would be, I would prepare dialogue for whichever direction that person went. So I was prepared for whatever direction you went. So if you do a business pitch, for example, you don't want to be shocked when they push back and say, I think that this isn't a good idea. Well, how about this or this and that? You come in prepared. And so also you're not like, it doesn't feel like a punch in the face when they call you out on something or they push back. So that's predictable dialogue. I will predict the dialogue you're going to have with me so I can have the response to that dialogue. I'm prepared. The other thing to do, which is really important in business, and that we would do is rehearse your opening line. So don't go in and wing it. Please don't go in and wing it. Rehearse your opening line. And your opening line should differ for each pitch you're doing, depends who it is. Is it a CEO, a CFO? Is it just a lateral employee? You adapt how your opening line is for the entity you have. And then also, what is their disposition? Are they very strong? So you bring a little bit more strength. Are they a little bit softer, more shy? You bring it down. You want to adapt. It's always adaptability. Who do I have? I adapt. That's why that whole authentic thing that you talked about before, it does not work to your advantage. I want you to be an adapter. Who would I have? I'm going to meet you. What we try to do and what society tells you to do is make them come to you. Yeah, You're so special that you make everybody bend to you. You make them, how insecure am I that I need to make everybody come to me? No. I see who you are. I just read you. I understand you. I see what your values are because I've shut the fuck up and I'm listening and I read you well. And now I'm going to adapt to you and I'm going to meet you where you are.
So much more powerful. I mean, you don't get mad at a chameleon when it changes its color. You're not like, well, chameleons are always green. I'm green. That's authentic. You're like, no, the chameleon's kind of a badass because no matter what's going on, the chameleon can blend right in. Nobody can even tell it's there. And I think that's the same thing you're talking about in business and in life. It's like, have the ability to still be you. The chameleon's still there, but it's able to actually blend into an environment. And man, if you could do that paired with preparation, like I think there's something about, and all of this is actually preparation because you're just being quiet and learning before you talk, even just in an instance. But really deep preparation that is personalized is so hard to push back on. It's so sexy. I mean, it's like when somebody else feels like they actually know you, when something is prepared perfectly for you, it's so rare today that I feel like it is a superpower. And so like if somebody comes and meets with me and they want a job, and they slide across the table a presentation of like, here's everything that's going on at your company. Here's all the stuff that I think you guys are doing wrong. Here's the stuff I think you're doing right. I could be wrong on all of this. I just want you to know I'm kind of obsessed with your mission. And I think what you're doing is really special. And so here's sort of how I think I could assist. I'd be like, let's sit and talk because that never happens. You know, they come in and expect you to ask the questions about them. And so it's really interesting. I had never thought about it from your lens before.
Well, it's funny you say that. So one woman who works with me now, Stormy, and I never intended to hire her, ever. I wasn't even looking for her. She showed up one day. I just met her through some circumstance, and she showed up one day. She's like, I know who you are. She's like, and she came to talk to me about something else, but on the side, she's like, I just want to give this to you. And she put a whole presentation to me, a whole presentation of something that I didn't know I even needed. It was my stats, how searchable my name was, who followed, all these things that I never thought to ever consider. She showed up, this whole PowerPoint presentation. And I was like, huh. And I was like, let's talk. And from let's talk a little bit more to talk a little bit more to now she works with me full time. Yeah. Because she did that.
Yeah, it's sexy. And, you know, you don't actually have to be smarter than anybody else. You don't have to be more knowledgeable and experienced. You can't be an idiot and you can't have no knowledge. But like that little ounce of preparation. But what's crazy is I'm sure we'll post this. And what often happens is it finds another side of the internet and people get mad at what they call free work.
What is that?
Like, why would I do all that work for an interview when I don't have the job and nobody's paying me? You can't expect that of me. And then I think of like the stories that you've told about what it took to even try out for the Secret Service. Like you weren't like, you need to pay me for tryouts, right? And you were getting up at like 3 a.m. and go. I mean, what did you have to go through to become a Secret Service agent?
Before I tell you that, I worked for, this woman came up before, Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy. I was in college. And it came out like they're looking for an intern. So I'm like, bah. I didn't even dawn on me as a congresswoman, like how hard can it be? I was like, wow, if they like me, they like me. I was very like that. I show up, I do an interview, I get the internship for free.
Yep.
So you might argue it's an internship for free. It's a couple of months. And it was a couple of months. My internship finishes. And I asked them, I'm like, I'd like to stay on. And they said, well, we have to open it up to be fair to other people. And we can't hire you. I'm like, well, I don't want to get paid. I'm like, what if you have 2 interns and I stay on and I keep working for free? And I had their cases, their constituent cases. And they liked me. They said, sure. I stayed on for almost 2 years and I worked for free. So you might look at that and be like, well, that's a complete waste of time. You already did the internship. Why do you need it? Well, when the hiring process came for the U.S. Secret Service, I needed 3 reference letters. And who do you think wrote me a stellar reference letter? Carolyn McCarthy. And I, to this day, think that that played a major role in my application getting pushed forward, that I had a congresswoman write me that reference letter. But I worked for her for 2 years for free. Even with the job, like NYPD, when I went in, I think it was $27,900 my salary, which meant my check was like $400 every 2 weeks after taxes. I had no idea. The first time the check comes, I get the check. And I was in the academy because they started paying us in the academy. And I was like, this can't be right. I was like, there's no way this is right. $400, 2 weeks. I was like, so I go to the sergeant. I'm like, sir, can I, I'm a cadet. I'm like, sir, can I show you something? And And he's like, what do you want, recruit? I was like, I don't think this is right. He's like, it's right. He didn't even look at it. It's right. It's right. Go away, recruit. Go away. Because you're not really supposed to talk to them. They call them the white shirts. You're not supposed to talk to them. I'm like, but sir, this can't be right. $400, 2 weeks. I'm like, this is crazy. And like, finally, I'm like, but sir, please. And he looks over. He's like, it's right, recruit. Go away. I was like, $400 for 2 weeks. I was like, how do you live? But I stuck it out. I didn't come from wealth. I didn't come from money. And I saw my family struggle quite a bit. I lived in government housing, which was like government subsidized housing, which is not great in New York City. No. But I think if you put effort and meaning, the wealth will come. But if you look at the dollar amount from the get-go, you're in trouble. Yeah. In fact, any student that I have that comes to me, because some of my students like know who I was and what I did, and they'll be like, Professor, what does the Secret Service agent make? And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, that job's not for you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I remember when I was with Chris, and he was still in the military, he was in the teams, and I was kind of already successful in business, and I was going to leave my firm at the time. And I was kind of fighting with one of the other partners, and so I was frustrated, and I'm like, I don't know, do I start a new business? Do I get another job? Like, what am I going to do? And he's like, leans over, gives me his hand, and he's like, babe, he's like, I got us. He's like, I'll pay for everything. I was like, dude, you don't know how expensive I am. But that is so fucking cute. And
I'm laughing because it's a government military salary.
I know. Oh yeah. I mean, he did not make a lot of money. And also in California, it's expensive there overall. I'm expensive. But he never cared. Like, he has never chased money. Man does not care. I mean, I think he likes some nice stuff now, but back then then also I think that's really cool. Like, a lot of women ask me, like, how do you find a great partner? I'm like, fuck, I don't know. I found one. He's awesome. I don't have any more reps at it than that. But I do think it's really helpful if you're kind of like I chase business and money and meaning that way. I always have. I like the game of business, but he doesn't. And I love that partnership, because when he doesn't, and I do, it means we're not playing the exact same game. So we're not competing with another, which really helps. Okay, I want to end with you. Are you writing another book? Because your last book was a massive bestseller. I'm about halfway through it right now. And it feels to me like Never Splitting the Difference with Chris Voss was one of those books that I come back to continuously. And your book, I didn't realize how much regarding mindset and like, you say it in a very strong way. It's not this like woo-woo manifesting mindset bullshit. And so are you going to write another one?
I'm working on my second one now. Yes. And it's going to be, right, we're working on the title, but 100 Rules of Engagement. And it's just so things to help people navigate and guide their situation. And I never thought I'd be like giving advice to people. Like, I actually, again, we're talking off camera. I left the U.S. Secret Service to go into news. I was just going to do news. I was going to be that person to say, hi, we had a shooting. Hi, we had this. Let me break it down for you. Let me do the assessment. I never thought I'd be on stage. I never wanted to. And I just stumbled into it. And when it came to a book, when I had been approached for books in the past, it was all tell-all. Yeah. And I was like, I can't. I was like, I'm not doing that. So a book in my head was really not on the forefront. And then a great literary agent came to me who was like, we want to do books that make the world a better, more just, wiser place. And I said, I'll do a book with you. And so when I wrote Becoming Bulletproof, I mean, I put a lot into it, and everything was about the reader. How do I help? What did I learn that helped me that can help them? And can it transcend into, the whole point was to help them use these things that I also learn and use, and I saw other great individuals around me use to help them in their life, to negotiate, to read people, to avoid deception, to not get hurt, to recover faster, just all those things. So a lot of time went into Bulletproof. It's like, it just got published, and it's getting published in Turkey now.
Love that.
And another country, I'm drawing a blank. Slovenia. It's coming out in Slovenia now. So I'm amazed that it's still going, and it's going into these other countries. So I'm humbled by it. So the second book I'm working on again, but again, the meaning is, how does it help other people? And so there's a window of time, which again, by mistake, I began doing mentor sessions because people would write in, Evie, I have this issue. And I was just like, all right, screw it. Let me do some mentor sessions and maybe I can help some people. Because I'm sure you get a lot of messages and DMs and it's a text or a message. Can you give me advice on this? And you're thinking, one, I don't have time, but two, I don't know enough to give you, I can't give you this blanket advice. I need to know the whole thing.
Yep.
So it was around the COVID time I opened up and started doing some mentor sessions with people in consultations. And that's when I started seeing repetitive patterns that people would fall into or mistakes they would make or things they didn't know. And so that's where rules of engagement is coming from. So I'm still in the drafting phase.
What's like one thing that people should look forward to from that book? Like, what are you like, God, people need to know this?
You're not that special. Because none of us are. And when you think you're special, your problems and pain and suffering is special and you can't get through it. And actually, one thing that kept me grounded, even at a young age when I would do interviews and interrogations, whether it was suspects or victims or witness, when I would hear what they were exposed to, it made my life like not so bad. My problem's not so bad. Like I just was like, who am I to have experienced anything? So that kept me centered and grounded for many, many, many years. But when you think you're really going through it and you're the only one going through it and nobody understands you, that is a horribly isolating place to be. It is going to, the more of an identity person you are, the more you overanalyze yourself and your pain and who screwed you over and how much they screwed you over, the more, the higher your depression is going to be and the higher anxieties you're going to be. And I actually would see that repeatedly when I did consulting or mentors, or even when I get off a stage and I speak. People will come to me, this person did this to me, and they will hold on to it. Like they hold on to it. And it's like, let it go. I'm not telling you to forgive. I am not a forgive person. I will let it go. I'm not letting you in. Oh, no. I learned my lesson the first time. Thank you. Stay all the way over there. But I'm not going to take you and what you did to me and take it with me like the next 7 years down. I'm not going to give you that. And I think one of the things is let it go. Mm-hmm. People hold on to the harm and the negativity and whatever somebody did to them, or that boss screwed me, or this guy let me go, or this person dumped me. And it's like, don't. It poisons you.
I can't wait to read this. Evie, thank you so much for being here today. This was so amazing.
Hey crew, this is so cool. The podcast is growing like crazy, and it's only actually because of one thing, you. I don't know if you know this, but the only way the Big Deal Pod grows is when you share it with somebody else. We don't do ads, we don't do pay for play, we don't go on other people's podcasts and talk about it. So if you think there was something helpful here, if we made you money, we made you think about your business or life differently, the most beautiful thing you can do for me is share it. And the most beautiful thing you can do for someone that you care about is to share it with them, help them grow alongside you. So please share the pod. That's how we grow. And also tag me on anything you share. I love resharing other builders across Instagram, Twitter, and all other platforms. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're super important to me.